All right, what is going on? It is drive time. It's a Monday afternoon. We're looking at about 10 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It continues to be pretty mild. It's about 48 degrees, a little cloudy and overcast. How about 50, 51 degrees tomorrow? As it's been unseasonably warm, it looks like that may change this week with a little rain, a little snow in the forecast. But as it is every single day, it's going to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That's Porter Larson behind the glass. Jam-packed Monday show. Happy Monday to you. Happy holiday week to you if you celebrate such things. Am I allowed to say Merry Christmas without getting canceled? I can't really keep up with the rules. So happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating this time of year, or even if this time of year doesn't land very well, whatever the deal is, hope you're doing all right. Happy Monday. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Great sports weekend. CFP playoffs, the bracket starts to unfold. A lot of people are mad. I guess that's just what we do. I'm going to do a little college football on the show today. Do a lot of college football on the show today, actually. We'll look back on the first round games of the CFP, look ahead to the quarterfinals now that will start taking place next week. It is a game week for Brigham Young as the Alamo Bowl will take place coming up on Saturday. Really excited for that one. Think it's going to be a fantastic bowl game, one of the best non-CFP bowl games. And BYU got some good news over the weekend as Chase Roberts, their stud wide receiver, is heading back down to Provo to play for BYU for at least another year. Chase feels like an NFL player to me. Feels like an NFL talent to me. So we'll get to some college football on the show today, of course. The transfer portal giveth, the transfer portal taketh away. The latest with the Utes. Keanu Tanavasa in the portal, unfortunately. The latest with BYU, as I referenced. BYU is going to get Chase Roberts back. So, unfortunately, the theme over the past little bit seems to be a lot of good news for BYU and a lot of bad news for Utah. But a lot of exciting potential players on their way to play for Coach Witt and Salt Lake. Hunter Clegg, who was high speed ahead to the University of Utah, came home from his mission and decided that God wanted him in Provo. So he's headed down to BYU. After getting home from his mission, he's a really good player, played at American Fork, and this is a bad loss for Utah and a good get for Brigham Young and Kalani Sitake. So all the local college football angles, we'll cover them from start to finish on this Monday afternoon of the program. Your Week 16 in the NFL. What a fun slate, man, of NFL games yesterday. My goodness. And your Week 16 slate of pro football will come to an end tonight with a little Monday night football. Not a great one. You can see the Saints and the Packers. The Saints are down to their third-string quarterback. I believe it's Spencer Rattler tonight. Jordan Love, the Green Bay Packers are 14.5-point favorites at home in Lambeau. So that will be the Monday night game tonight. Don't forget, we are your home of the NFL here in this market. So you'll hear Monday Night Football on both ESPN 700, of course, 92.1 FM. I should probably pause to let you know that if you still listen to us on 700 AM, first of all, thank you. Don't stop doing that. But try the FM signal. It's so much better. It's 92.1 FM. And you'll hear a little NBA on 960 AM and 98.3 FM. So we got you covered. All the biggest and best games are on our radio station and our network here at ESPN 700. So we'll do some NFL on the show today. I was talking to Sean during Crosstalk about the continued dominant play of Sam Darnold, what it means for the Minnesota Vikings, what it means for J.J. McCarthy. Aaron Rodgers today said he's open to mentoring a rookie quarterback for the Jets next year. Thanks, pal. Just can it. Get rid of that dude. The Jets lost again because they're horrible. But we'll do some pro football on the show. How about let's clap it up for my Utah Jazz. Come on, guys. Let's clap it up for my Utah Jazz. The red-hot Utah Jazz winning 2 straight basketball games. Got a lot of feedback over the weekend that I'm being too negative about the Jazz, Porter. Does that track with you?
Yeah, I think that there's something there, man.
They're 7-20.
I know. Maybe just today because of, they were 5-20 last week. So
yes, they were. The red-hot Utah Jazz, 2 games on the road now for another couple of games. What I should say, they're back at home taking on Philly on the 28th. They're going to see Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers tonight. That's going to be a 5 o'clock Mountain Time tip. Cavs have been awesome. Donovan's been so good this year. So we'll do a little NBA, a little Jazz basketball on the program today. So a lot to get to. Good guest list on a Monday afternoon. Porter doing a good job booking the show. Back in the saddle after a couple of days off, going into the Wild. Porter was. Brandon Huffman will be our first guest Right out of the gates, national recruiting for 24/7 Sports. He's been reporting a lot of the news for both BYU and Utah. We'll do some national stuff with Brandon as well. Excited to catch up with him. Tom Haberstroh, NBA Daily Assist Style, drops by. Neil Smith, behind the glass. We'll do a little Utah Hockey Club. They had an overtime game against Anaheim. They did end with a point, and they've had at least 1 point in 8 straight games. That's only the 5th time that's ever happened in pro hockey history for a quote-unquote expansion team. Even though they're not an expansion team, it is a new franchise getting a point in 8 straight. So they played a lot better. We'll bring in Neil today. How about Eric Weddle, E-Wed, former Utah great, now doing a little coaching of his own. We'll talk some youth football, some college football with Eric Weddle, and continue the conversation with our guy, Chris Kamrani. Typically a Friday staple of ours, but CK rolls by on a Monday because we have a lot of college football to get to. So Brandon Huffman, Tom Haberstroh, Neil Smith, Eric Weddle, Chris Kamrani, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. And after a prolonged weekend into the wild, Porter Larson returns. You stayed safe? Any harrowing interactions with wild beasts?
None that stand out. Nothing that I can speak to. I'm here, so yes, survived and back to it. Talking some sports for the afternoon. Of course, we'll be off a little bit this week as well. So just getting what we can in while we are here in studio. Wishing everyone an early happy holidays and I'll say Merry Christmas. I'll say it.
I'm honestly just wondering what the right thing is to say this year, because it seems like the PC police, change the rules this holiday season. Every single time we roll into December, there are some things you can say and some things you cannot say.
Yeah, I think all of that's made up. Unwritten rules, Spence.
All right.
I don't abide by them.
So I'm allowed to say Merry Christmas.
I think so.
I'm allowed to say Happy Holidays.
I'm going to approve it, but it's up to you.
Hanukkah? Shout out
absolutely.
To our Jewish friends celebrating Hanukkah.
Regardless of what you're celebrating, I think I can wish you a happy form of that.
Okay, love it. So whatever you're celebrating, we've got your back on the drive. That's the bottom line.
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're good there.
Fair enough. All right, our first guest for some recruiting news, including some rough news for Utah, some better news for BYU, will be Brandon Huffman. Before we get to Brandon on a Monday, courtesy of our good friends at Standard Restaurant Supply, your tailgate headquarters. You get everything you need to make your tailgate epic at Standard. Go to standardrestaurant.com or check out their location at 3500 Southwest Temple. It is time now for your opening tip. College football locally continues to kind of dominate the headlines, and if you are a BYU fan or if you exist in that ecosystem, the news for you has been pretty good. Well, quite frankly, all season long, as BYU's reward for a really solid 10-win campaign will be the Alamo Bowl to take on the Colorado Buffaloes. And in my opinion, one of, if not the best, non-CFP bowl games. Of course, you have Travis Hunter, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, who, by the way, is like an awesome dunker. I don't know if you saw Travis pulling all these dunks over the weekend at a Colorado basketball game. And the odds-on favorite for now to be the number one pick seems to be Shedeur Sanders. Colorado is a 4-point favorite as of right now. The over-under is 54.5. The line opened up as even, and a bunch of wise guy money went the way towards Colorado. It went up to about 4.5 at one point. Now it's settled at 4. So that game, by the way, we will have the BYU game on our radio station. Kind of a bizarre twist, but you can hear BYU Colorado here on our radio station coming up. So BYU Colorado Alamo Bowl on Saturday. And over the weekend, some really good news for Brigham Young, as well, a couple of different pieces of good news. Chase Roberts has announced via his social media, as he said he would last week, because, brand building and all that, that he is back. He's coming back for his senior season. Chase, as I said earlier, feels like an NFL talent to me. I don't know if he would be a mid-round draft guy or maybe undrafted free agent, but he's got good size, he has good speed, and he has been just a dynamic playmaker over the past couple of years. 843 yards, 4 touchdowns this year, and really not just a deep play guy, but a guy that you can move around a little bit. In fact, BYU used Chase like I felt like Utah wanted to use Brant Keithy. Brant would have been able to stay healthy. Surprised that they were able to move him around, and he was able to make as many plays as he did. So good news for BYU. Chase Roberts back for a senior season. And good news for BYU, bad news for Utah, that four-star edge rusher Hunter Clegg has flipped his commitment from Utah to BYU after getting home from his mission last week. So Hunter played at American Fork. He was one of the top players coming out of high school, part of that 2023 recruiting class that was really highly touted, but if we're honest, never really filled the promise that we all thought that class had. And he's a really good player. This is a big-time addition for BYU, and it's a rough loss for Utah. And unfortunately, the rough losses for Utah continues. Keanu Tadavasa is now in the transfer portal. So, Porter, let me bring you in on this because we have been tracking all of these names. And, you hear some names and you're like, all right, well, good kid, didn't really play much, best of luck, tap him on the head, send him on his way. But this might be the one that stings the most so far. Keanu was awesome last year. He was one of the few dudes that stayed healthy all year, and he wreaked havoc along the line. Your reaction, and we'll see what happens. We don't know where he's going, but news broke that Keanu Tadavasa has hit the transfer portal.
Yeah, Keanu, obviously one of the best defenders for Utah, not only for Utah, but in the conference along the defensive line. And it's a big loss in a lot of ways, not only on the field, but this is a guy who has been kind of recruiting other transfer players. And I think as recently as last week was on his social media, like professing that he was not going anywhere. So quite the turn, both for Keanu and for Utah. And if you're kind of gauging the interwebs, it sounds like BYU might be in on this process, but there's also some really, really big time schools. And I'm talking Michigan, I'm talking SEC, Big Ten schools that have Keanu Tadavasa on their radar. And that's just where we're at, Spence. I mean, yes, it's going to hurt for Utah fans, but keep in mind, there are also some transfer ins that Utah's really excited about, much like the situation they had last year with Cam Calhoun. Even though that ended up a one-year rental, it was productive, and Utah's hoping to do that with some guys this year too.
Yeah, Cam Calhoun on his way to Tuscaloosa, and as Porter referenced, some big-time programs in on Tadavasa, and those are the two names that really, really hurt. And look, it's just difficult for me to start throwing parties over a team that's being built on paper right now. Like, I feel like there's some promise with a lot of these young players that they're bringing in. I feel like after the dust settled, the fact that you have an offensive coordinator and Jason Beck who's bringing his quarterback with him and Devin Dampier is a good thing. But this is all on paper as of now. And it's a really, really tough thing, not just for Utah football, but most any program, that the current reality of the sport is you almost have to rebuild every single year, and it's not sustainable. We've talked about it. It's not going to last. And with all of the wailing and gnashing of teeth in the world of college football over the course of the weekend as a result of, if we call it what it is, it was more or less a dud in the first round of the CFP bracket. Change is on its way. And we've been saying that for a long time, but I do feel like in this instance, it just can't continue. And there are enough smart people that care about college football that will step in and make sure this thing gets going in the right direction. But it will be a brand new Utah football team next year. BYU hasn't suffered as many exits, but they have some. And so BYU, like they did last year, they're going to rely more on continuity and internal growth. And Utah's going to rely on almost a brand new locker room. Certainly with the skill position players, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, more or less all rebuilt. O-line back and intact, which is great because the offensive line, when healthy last year, was a bright spot. And I know that we're never supposed to worry about a Kyle Whittingham and a Morgan Scalley coach defense, but Cam Calhoun, Keanu Tadavasa, two of their better players now in the transfer portal. So we'll get to more college football throughout the course of the game. Just the course of the show today. I will talk about these games. Clemson, Texas, pretty competitive, probably the most competitive first-round game. Ohio State dump truck Tennessee, but Ohio State fans still want their coach fired, which is weird. Penn State, SMU is not even worth watching. Indiana, Notre Dame, also inclement weather. I thought the scenes were pretty cool, but the game wasn't great. And ultimately, for everybody, before we catch a break, for everybody that talks about this as an utter failure for the first iteration of the CFP, there's some of us around here who do remember Utah beating Alabama in the Sugar Bowl back in 2009, and I think that's the best win in program history. You could certainly debate some of the big Pac-12 USC wins, Pac-12 championship games and such, but it's the unknown that keeps us watching. And college football, more so, in my opinion, than any other sport, is impossible to predict. The chaos week in and week out is what makes it fun. And I don't want to dilute the regular season at all. And I don't have a problem with some of these first-round games where you have lesser teams going up against blue bloods, because occasionally Utah beats in Alabama in 2009, and that's what makes it historically special and fun. So we'll see what the rest of the bracket, brings our way. It's going to be Ohio State and Oregon. That's the Rose Bowl. Penn State, Boise State is the Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame, Georgia is going to be the Sugar Bowl. Then Texas, Arizona State will be the Peach Bowl. So 8 teams left standing in college football. We'll talk more college football throughout the course of the show. And coming up on the other side, all the latest in the transfer portal for Utah and BYU with Brandon Huffman. Little NBA with Tom Haberstroh, some hockey with Neil Smith, and then college football from 4 o'clock to 6 with Eric Weddle and Chris Comrani. Off and running on a Monday. Happy holiday week to you. Whatever you celebrate, we got your back right here on ESPN 700. Going Spotify and rap today again. Porter's leading off. You're catching me off guard here. This is Lauryn Hill. It's Little Fugees.
Little Fugees, Lauryn Hill.
This is from your Spotify Unwrapped.
This is.
I'm confused.
I'll be honest. This song in particular is like on my top songs every year. So
it's an excellent song.
It's just one of those.
Excellent song. Going to bring in Tom Haberstroh coming up in a bit for some NBA. Neil Smith for some hockey. Eric Weddle, former Utes. Chris Comrade from The Athletic. Batting leadoff, though, on this Monday afternoon. Do a little college football. Great to have Brandon Huffman back on the drive on a Monday. Brandon, happy Monday, man. How we doing?
Oh, you know what? We are counting down the days, minutes, seconds to when the portal closes. And, I mean, we're in a dead period, at least till New Year's Day, but the portal's still open for another 5 days. So we are really excited about that. Like a 4-day window where nothing really can go on.
I gotta know from your standpoint how this transfer portal stuff has changed your world. I mean, it feels like guys like you are just constantly. I picture you with like 3 cell phones, 2 laptops, trying to keep up on all this stuff. How has this transfer portal business, Brandon, kind of changed your day-to-day gig?
Well, I'll tell you, it's fabulous content. I will say that. It's been fabulous to cover. It's fascinating because, you know, we used to joke the day after signing day in the old days was National Unfollow Somebody on Twitter Day. Well, now you can't because you got to cover their 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th recruitments once they go into the portal. And, you know, it's gotten to the point now where, you know, the fans, they don't, I mean, the diehards know who the high school kid is. They know who the kid that their big-time 4-star, 5-star recruit is. But the casual fan knows who the guy in the portal is because they may have heard his name more often. So there's such a thirst, even though it's in such a limited window, there's such a thirst for portal news and portal intel, even if it's a guy that's, you know, kind of off the grid a little bit. And so we're constantly, you know, with signing day moving up 2 weeks, we're at about a 1-month, 6-week blitz of it's nothing but nonstop portal coverage.
Yeah, and look, it's kind of fun for people like you and I who are in this business because instead of analyzing the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, all due respect to Fresno State and NIU, we get to talk about these exciting players that may be able to change programs right away. So let's do a little Utah stuff here, Brandon, and then we'll kind of jump around a little bit. And Utah has a new offensive coordinator in Jason Beck, and he's bringing his quarterback with him in Devin Dampier, who had a really good year for New Mexico last season. What should Ute fans know from your vantage point and perspective about both this new offensive coordinator and what appears to be their new starting quarterback?
I mean, the guy's a winner. He was a winner at the high school level, playing for one of the top programs in the West in Arizona at Saguaro High School, and was lightly recruited because of his size. You know, he wasn't the biggest guy in the world, and it was no more of as a passing quarterback. As a running quarterback in high school and playing on a really talented team. Well, he goes to New Mexico, and you know, we saw with John Mateer leaving Washington State for Oklahoma. If you can make teams pay with your ability to run, you become that much more attractive. It may, you know, lower your ceiling for the NFL, but your job is to win college football games, and he's got the ability to win college football games. And just it's kind of the epitome of what the portal has allowed for some guys to kind of bet on themselves and go into the portal and, you know, become much more desirable players. And I think with Dampier, he's a optimal fit for Jason Beck's offense. We saw it in New Mexico. And when you saw what Cameron Ward did at Washington State when he went with his with his college head coach Eric Morris, that familiarity is not like a lot of cases where a portal quarterback goes in, he's learning a new system. He already knows the system. He's already ran that system to perfection. Now he's got better players around him to really enhance his ability in that system. And I think this is just the perfect fit.
Any pause, any concern about just simply jumping up a level in competition? You referenced the Cam Ward example, but you know, Devin did what he did at New Mexico, and now it's a Big 12 schedule moving forward. Any concern as to whether or not the skill set transfers now that the just simply the competition's a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always that concern because for every Cam Ward, you know, a Vernon Adams, who was kind of the first guy that made the jump from the FCS to making it from Eastern Washington to Oregon a decade ago, you have Dakota Fruitcup, who Oregon went to that same well the next year, got him out of Montana State, and he got benched. It also didn't help him that there was a freshman on that roster named Justin Herbert that Mark Helfrich decided to ride. But for every, guy that makes that jump, there's another guy that doesn't. But I think with Devin Dampier, you just look at fit. And I think the best way to do that is look at what Dylan Gabriel did when he got to Oklahoma, where he was with Jeff Levy at Oklahoma or at Mississippi State. And, before Levy went to Mississippi State, he was with him at UCF. And so there was a familiarity with Levy and his play calling when he was the OC at UCF. So he goes to Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel made a very seamless transition from UCF to Oklahoma. So I think that's the one caveat that kind of helps make it a little bit easier is he's already got that familiarity with that coach. So even though the circumstances may be changing, the surrounding talent may be changing, the opposition may be changing, you're with a familiar system and a familiar face. And so he's going to play to your strengths, even though the talent you're going up against is probably stronger.
So we'll stick with the quarterback position for a moment, Brandon, because I, just figured with Devin in the fold, Isaac Wilson would probably go try to find another place to play college football. And, as you do this for a living. Historically speaking, Utah doesn't, lock in quarterbacks with a high school resume like Isaac has. And it's clear that he has got a ton of talent. Last year, it was just simply not the plan for him to step in and get his head kicked in to learn the lessons he did as an 18-year-old true freshman. But after dipping his toe in the portal waters, Isaac elects to come back. Now, I haven't heard an update on his health, so I don't know if he's ready to compete with Devin for the starting job. It feels like the starting job is Devin's, but I kind of like that Isaac didn't, run from the challenge of competing with a quarterback who's coming in with the knowledge, as you pointed out, with the new offensive coordinator system. But are you surprised that Isaac elected to come back and play for the Utes?
I'm a little surprised just because you do have kind of a turnkey offensive coordinator quarterback combination with Beck and Dampier, but also there's probably some really good self-scouting and some self-awareness there. Maybe physically he's not quite ready to be the guy just yet. Maybe, mentally he's not quite ready. He was a little bit overwhelmed by things. And I think you look at this last year where you had a couple of guys that started as true freshmen in Dante Moore at UCLA and Jaden Rashad at Arizona State. They both left situations at the schools that they were at where they either got benched or injured, and then they went to schools that already had an established starter. In the case of Rashad going to Georgia with Carson Beck, and in the case of Dante Moore going after Dylan Gabriel was already making the move to Oregon. They went with the understanding like you're not going to start. You're going to come here. You're going to get reps in practice. You're going to, be our guy long term. But we've got either a senior, we've got an experienced guy that we're going to ride with, and you can kind of use this year as a get right year. And both were willing to do that. And I think with Isaac, in his case, it was probably like maybe he needed to do it. Maybe this year was going in with the mentality that he was going to be the backup with Cam Rising being the guy. You had Brandon Rose on the roster. You had other guys. So there wasn't the expectation to play. Then you get thrown to the fire. Maybe that get right year is instead the 2025 season, and then he can maybe take over in 26 and beyond. But I think there's something to that, it is surprising on one hand where you have a lot of quarterbacks that want the change of scenery, especially when a new guy brings his guy in. But then there's also the self-awareness of saying, hey, maybe this is a better situation. And it probably doesn't hurt that you saw what happened with Zach in New York Jets, where he was thrown into the fire and never really had a chance to kind of redeem himself. And I think that maybe there was also the understanding, like, hey, this is still the best spot for you. There's a reason you picked Utah out of high school. Maybe let's just pump the brakes a little bit and kind of wait and play these things out before we go somewhere else, because you can always go back into the portal in a year from now.
One more quarterback question, then we'll move on to some other things, because I'm just wondering if you have any intel on Cameron Rising. There was a report that it's unlikely that he comes back, and then rumors about where he may land. And, obviously it didn't end for Cam the way that we thought it would here at Utah, but he will leave a legend. At least I hope that he will, for what he did, winning back-to-back Pac-12 championships. But any idea on what the future holds for Cam Rising as we're all kind of waiting any sort of an official announcement?
I don't even want to speculate. I mean, I'd heard that there was talk that he could go to a Cal or a UCLA, being a West Coast guy, being that, Cal lost their quarterback to the portal, UCLA us there as a graduation. At the same time, with the way this season went with the injury again, does he just hang it up? Does he try to be Cam McCormick and do the 10-year Van Wilder thing, or does he just kind of try to walk away at some point and get into coaching, get into something like that? I've heard some names, but even then it was kind of like, hey, we just come in here from a depth standpoint. Maybe if coaching is in your future, come be, a player coach type of thing. At some point, though, you just got to start thinking long term. You're not going to get the NIL deal that you got at previous stops. And I think the same said for a lot of these guys that are kind of extending their career and prolonging it. At some point, you got to understand your market worth is not what it once was. And schools are not going to invest in a player if there's the potential that he's not going to play. And so I think that limits his pool. And at some point, you're almost better off leaving on your own terms, even if the terms never really were allowed to dictate for Cam to leave on his own terms. I think at this point that gives him that opportunity to do so.
In addition to revamping and rebuilding that quarterback room, Brandon, as you know, Utah's had to do the same thing with their running backs as Jalen Glover is going to UNLV. Mekhi Bernard is moving on. Mike Mitchell is in the transfer portal. And Wayshawn Parker has committed to play for the Utes after a really, really good year up on the Palouse. According to what I read, he was the number 2 running back in the portal, and Utah lands Wayshawn Parker. Give me your thoughts on this running back for the Utes.
Well, I love Wayshawn Parker. I mean, he was a guy that I really liked in high school. He was at Elk Grove High School for the early part of his high school career. Then he transferred over to Grant High School in Sacramento, helped them win a state championship. Devontae Parker's alma mater, winning a state championship there, I think like 15 or 16 years ago himself. But Wayshawn is kind of the prototype of what the portal can do for you when you go in as a true freshman. He was lightly recruited. He made the move from a school that ran the wing T at Elk Grove, went to Grant, which has had a proud tradition, a lot of good players, but because he transferred in between his junior and senior year, his senior year is kind of ignored by that point with the recruiting calendar changing the way it did. So he goes to Washington State and does a lot of damage in the limited reps that he got this year, but became very appealing to a lot of schools. And in an era where you don't have a lot of running backs, where it's such a pass-friendly, pass-happy era of football, a lot of running backs have become slot receivers because they're now sealing the market on the running back. The value, the positional value of running back has dwindled compared to where it once was. So a lot of those guys that played receiver, well, there's still a place for a really good running back and a good running game. And I think, he's a perfect pickup. A lot of, obviously, familiarity with Mark Atua. And I think that's the kind of guy that can come in and really bolster Utah's running back room. And then, they got his teammate, his close friend, Devin Green, who also transferred into Grant last year from Sheldon High School in Sacramento. And, I saw the Grant football Twitter, who just came off a state championship, was abuzz about their 2 guys from last year being in the same room together and being reunited.
So according to your rankings, Utah right now at number 19 with the transfer portal class. I think at one point that was up to 15. So overall, before we move off the Utes, I actually have a couple of questions of players that are leaving, but how would you, from your vantage point as somebody who does this for a living in the way that I don't, just kind of analyze Utah's transfer portal class from a 30,000-foot macro view as of now?
Well, getting a guy like Wayshawn Parker makes this a good portal class because of the positional value, maybe not being as high, but then being as talented as he is. But then, you add in a guy like Lolo Tonga. Now, he is probably the most intriguing player that Utah has a commitment from out of the portal because he's really only played 1 year of football. He was committed to San Jose State going into his senior year, having never played football in high school. He was a former high school basketball star, but he was 6'6", 6'7", and San Jose State took his commitment without him playing. Well, then he goes and plays his senior year and absolutely blows up, has offers from all over the country, and ultimately signs with USC. He goes to SC, redshirts this year, sees limited time. A lot of people thought he was going to end up at Arizona because that staff recruited him. He took his commitment at SC. He goes on his visit to Arizona. I'm sorry, when they were at San Jose State. He goes on his visit to Arizona. Then he goes to Utah the next day and commits to the Utes. And this is a high reward, high ceiling guy because of his athleticism, because of his length. And this could be the kid that, as he gets more football under his belt, there's no reason to rush him in to go in and take over for Spencer Fano or Caleb Loma this year. But in 2026, I think they're going to get a guy who has now spent 2 years in a college football program and 3 years playing the game. This guy could end up being kind of the sneaky surprise, really good pickup of this group. And then Lance Holtzclaw. I was at the USC-UW game in November where he made a key play that won the game for Washington on a goal line stand. And a lot of talent there, just had some experienced older guys that Washington brought in out of the portal this year. So a couple of players that, I think that their ceilings are really high. They just need the opportunity. And so I really like what they got with Parker, with Holtzclaw, and then to go along with Wayshawn Parker and Devin Green. So those 4 alone kind of really make this an intriguing class.
And, of course, like every other program, Utah adds, and they have players taken from as well. The transfer portal giveth and taketh away, as we all like to say. And, you see some names pop up and you go, okay, good kid, best of luck. And then other names pop up and you go, oh, damn it. And Cameron Calhoun, one of them, who's leaving Utah to go play in Tuscaloosa at Alabama. And he's really, really good. That's a big, big loss. So give me your thoughts on Cam Calhoun going down to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and then you throw in the fact that it's, I'm a Utah man am I, and then he's out of there the next couple of days. It's hard to get attached. And I think that's what fans need to understand, that you watch what they do, not what they say. And I think a lot of fans need to understand that, when you're an elite cover corner type of guy, there is going to be a really huge market for you. And obviously with Alabama having two really good corners this year, one a true freshman in Xavier Brown and the other in Damani Jackson, who could go to the NFL after this year, Cameron Calhoun became that much more attractive. Obviously, Utah had their issues on offense, but their defense was strong once again. And, another player that it's not like he's making a lateral move. With all due respect to the 2008 Sugar Bowl, Alabama's still one of the bluest bloods, if not the bluest blood in college football. So you can understand why that move may have happened. And I think, Keanu Tanavasa leaving this morning, that was kind of a surprise, just given that he's seen a lot of snaps for the youth. But I think, fans need to understand, you bemoan the guy, you're like, oh, he wouldn't want him anyway, but you always welcome the transfers. So that's where we're at with college football in 2024. You're going to lose some guys, but you're going to gain some guys, and then you just hope that those replacements fit.
Yeah, you referenced Keanu, and that's another one. When I woke up to the news, I went, oh, man, that one hurts. He's a great kid. Somebody's going to get a really, really good player. Any intel on where you're hearing that Keanu may land?
The two that I've heard right off the jump are Texas and Florida. I think with Texas having some coaches there that recruited him when he was in high school, defensive coordinator Johnny Nansen, who's the co-DC, had been at Arizona, he'd been at UCLA and USC, obviously has some ties into Mission Viejo, into Southern California. So Texas is a school that they've always been aggressive in the portal, and they've got a lot of resources to allow for portal guys to make that a natural transition. But then Florida, Billy Napier may have had the best resurrection story of college football this year, and now they've got a little bit of juice, keeping some of the guys in the fold that a lot of people thought might leave, to get a couple of guys out of the portal that they have, and then to get some of the players they flip down the stretch. Florida is coming in, and I think that Utah fans won't want to hear this, and I'm sure the Utah coaches don't want to hear it, but I think it's a sign of respect that, hey, you've got schools that know that they've done a phenomenal job of developing these guys, so now let's go get them for their last year. You did all the work. We get to have that senior year from them.
All right. Before we get to BYU, I wanted to get your thoughts on just the hot button topic that is the transfer portal, free agency happening during the season while teams are still playing. I mean, it seems so beyond ridiculous that coaches have to deal with it this time of year where you're practicing for a bowl game, or if you're one of the 8 teams left standing, you're trying to win a national championship. And then when you're done with practice, you have to run interference to make sure your players aren't leaving. This is not sustainable, Brandon, is it? I mean, this can't last. I would imagine there have to be some sort of change on the horizon, yeah?
There's going to be changes on the horizon. Now, the one thing that I will say, and, college coaches are all playing the martyr. They're all playing the victim. The only schools that I really think are the victims are the group of fives that don't have the street cachet to tell a kid, hey, we're Kent State. And by no means do I mean that Kent State's tampering. I'm just saying that, some of these logos aren't going to move the needle with a kid. But there's other schools that are going to, and they're going to have the back channels being worked during September and October. But a lot of these schools that are acting like, hey, we're doing all this, they're doing the same thing, except they're now the ones that are going into the G5 to get some of these schools. Some of the lower tier Power 5 schools or Power 4 schools, they may be losing guys, but then they're going and pilfering players from a G5 or the FCS. So everybody's doing it. The reality is there's a lot of schools that are acting like they're above and beyond reproach with any of this, and they're doing the exact same things. They may not themselves specifically be doing it. There's a lot of plausible deniability going on, but I guarantee you there's people in their offices. There's people that are tied to their staff that are doing all the back channel stuff. That's why you're seeing guys commit to these schools so quickly, in a lot of cases sight unseen, because they've already known for months that they were going to end up there.
All right, let's move over to BYU with a couple of minutes left, Brandon, before I say you loose. And BYU got some really good news this week. A couple of pieces of good news, actually, but we'll start with good news for BYU, bad news for Utah, as Hunter Clegg, who is a 4-star edge rusher who played his high school ball at American Fork and one of the top players in the state in 2023, which was a great recruiting class on paper for Utah. But Hunter Clegg has flipped and he's headed down to BYU after getting home from his church mission last week. Brandon, what are your thoughts on this?
I'd love to pick up for BYU. I think that's one that, Utah fans can seriously bemoan and be bummed about and be upset about. And I think that it kind of shows you what BYU has done the last couple of years, and specifically in 2024 on the field, and kind of, give a tale of what happened to Utah this year on the field, where you leave, you come back, and two programs seem to be trending, just based on what you saw this season, seem to be trending in opposite directions. Whereas 2 years ago, Utah was coming off their second straight Rose Bowl appearance, and BYU is heading into a new conference kind of with the unknown. So now he comes back, and hey, BYU's trending the right way. Utah may be trending the other way. And, that's the thing with the way the portal is, and even without using the portal, it was a matter of him signing with Utah and ended up at BYU. That's just kind of how modern college football is. Yesterday's prices aren't today's prices. Yesterday's teams aren't today's teams. And it becomes a lot more appealing if your team is winning, and it becomes a lot less appealing if the team that you sign with is losing. So this is a guy that I think is really going to help BYU. Big fan of him. He's a top 247 guy coming out of high school. But I think that's a big win for Kalani Sitake, because I think he'll be able to come in and be a pretty quickly impact contributor.
Another big win is Chase Roberts coming back for his senior year. Chase has really evolved and grown in a way that I think shocked a lot of people. BYU used Chase last year in a way that I think Utah wanted to use Brant Kuithe. They're different players. They technically play different positions, but he ran the football out of the backfield. They ran jet sweeps. He can catch it deep. He's big. He's fast. He feels like a pro, Brandon, to me. But Chase is back at BYU for his senior year. What's your reaction?
Yeah. I think that's huge. I think when you can get a playmaker that is already a known quantity, and a guy that obviously impacts the game in so many ways, a guy that you just want to get the ball in his hands somehow and let him go to work, and then he has shown a penchant for doing so, you'll take that. You will take, I don't think any BYU fan, I think even maybe the most dyed-in-the-wool BYU fan would have thought maybe a 10-2 season was possible. But to then get that, and then knowing that you have a lot of those core players coming back, and a guy like Chase Roberts in an era where it's about scoring, where you can have a good defense, but if you're not scoring enough points, it's not going to matter. Having a guy who can impact the game offensively like him, to bring him back, allows him to continue that momentum and really build for the short term, but also give them that long-term kind of impact that they're not a one-year flash in the pan. So I think, him coming back, and again, college football, right? Where 5 years ago, you're leaving when your stock is never higher. Now your stock might be high, and you're excited to come back, because it's a lot more rewarding to stay in college and be the guy rather than be a day three fringe pick where there's no guarantee you're going to have a roster spot come August.
All right, Brandon, before I set you loose, I just want to get your take on the current pulse of college football, where a lot of people seem to be very upset about, how the first round of the CFP games went, where there just was not a lot of competitive action. I honestly don't know whether or not you're a fan of the expanded 12 team. Do you like the auto bid? Do you think it's going to roll through the way it is with maybe some adjustments, or would you like to see it blown up? It feels like there's a lot of angry college football coaches and media members this Monday afternoon.
No, I love it. I love it. Now, and you got to remember, I'm almost 50 years old. I'm as a traditionalist as they come. I'm the guy that woke up on New Year's Day watching 2 bowl games for every window of the day, watching 6 games. And when the Sugar Bowl and the Orange Bowl wrapped up at the end of the night, I was beside myself. What was I going to do for the next 8 months? But I like it. I think we need to understand that, in the college football semifinals, in the years where there's only 4 teams, we had plenty of blowouts. I remember Ohio State getting shut out by Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl, and then the year before that, Michigan State getting shut out by Alabama in the Cotton Bowl, and then, of course, Alabama, Clemson both won the national titles. But I also remember not too long ago where everybody was tired of seeing Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Georgia, or some collection of those 3 or 4 schools always in the playoffs, and saying we need more teams. Now we get more teams, and everybody's like, we need Alabama in this, Clemson and Georgia, and we don't need Clemson in it. It's like, make up your minds, people. This is great. Watching those games on Friday night and Saturday all during the day, the results of the game weren't great, but you can't tell me for that first 10 minutes when you're watching Notre Dame and Penn State playing in their respective games before, SMU and Indiana got into huge holes, that you could be like, damn, this is fascinating. And people were even saying then, we need to have the quarterfinal rounds on campus, because that was the takeaway. That's what makes college football so exciting. I'm going to the Peach Bowl in 2 weeks, and it's going to be inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but that would be a game that would be off the chart, just exciting if it was being played in Austin or in Tempe. And so I think, it's the first time. People aren't good with change, but I think we're going to come to love this because there's now talk about there being, the 14-team playoff in 2 years or maybe even beyond that. I think 12 is going to show that that's actually a pretty healthy number. Let's just stay there.
Well, Brandon, I appreciate the time. You guys have been killing it, and you've been a great North Star for those of us that have to do this for 4 hours every day to come up with content and info. So I appreciate it, man. Keep up the good work, and happy holidays to you and yours, all right?
Happy holiday to you guys. Appreciate you.
All right, Brandon Huffman, National Recruiting Editor for 24/7 Sports. You can check him out on Twitter. Just his name, at Brandon Huffman, is where you find him. Those guys have been doing a great job of keeping us up to date with both the local and national stuff. So, yeah, just in case you missed it, Hunter Clegg, who was one of the best high school players in the state in 2023, committed to Utah, went on a mission, came home, and then has elected to head on down to Provo to play for Kalani. And Chase Roberts also announced his intention to return to BYU for his senior year. And in a bit of a shock, Keanu Tanavasa, one of the best Ute defensive players from not just a year ago, he's been with the program for 3 years, announced his intent to transfer. He's in the transfer portal, and Brandon says Florida and Texas hot on Keanu's tail. And, of course, that's after last week when it was announced after entering the transfer portal that Cameron Calhoun was headed to Tuscaloosa to play for Alabama. So the chaos continues. There's actually a bowl game going on right now. It's NIU and Fresno State in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. We'll get back to college football. We have Eric Weddle joining us, former Ute. We have Chris Kamrani from The Athletic. But coming up next, the red-hot Utah Jazz have won 2 straight games. We'll do a little NBA with Tom Haberstroh, and then some hockey with Neil Smith. There's an RSL trade to talk about, too. So a busy, busy Monday show. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Very easy to use, okay? So if you've never been involved with gambling on sports, first of all, congratulations. Don't do it. Second of all, this is the easiest way to do it. You don't have to worry about over, under, spread, money line, anything like that. We'll use tonight's Jazz-Cavs game as an example. Walker Kessler, more or less, 10.5 rebounds. Donovan Mitchell, more or less, 24.5 points. It's easy. It's very easy to do. You just pick 2 players, and then you pick more or less on their stat projections. For your chance to win up to 1,000 times your money, you can make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30 million in rewards during Picksmas. So here's the deal. They're giving away free money. As I always say, go get the free money, try it, see if you like it. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game all season long. While we're in the area of sports gambling, let's bring on our shark. Bring on a shark to give us some advice, some over-unders, some money lines, some spreads. Chris Kamrani on a Monday afternoon. CK, happy Monday. How are you, buddy?
I'm glad that you consider me a shark, man. I did recently watch the Ocean's 11 trilogy, and those movies are very good, man. Like, I know they're old, but especially Ocean's 11, like, damn, if there was an alternate universe where I could be a very handsome thief and go to Vegas and enjoy a very fun, exciting life, that would be pretty cool.
I feel like you have the first 2 boxes checked. You're very handsome. And both what you and I do for a living, it feels like stealing. We're kind of, in this space where they're not real jobs. I feel like you have the first 2 boxes checked, yes?
So who would be, oh man, we could spend an entire segment just figuring out who would be on our Ocean's 11. But yes. First off, we would need to figure out who's going to be, the safecracker, who's going to be, yeah, I mean, we could find a couple Mormon twins from Provo who are really good at,
sure.
I think we could get there pretty decently fast. It would take some time, but yeah, I think eventually we would have to enlist folks who have institutional knowledge of what it would mean to, in theory, of course, we're not prognosticating on air that we want to rob a casino, but this is just me talking about the Ocean's 11 movies for all of the folks online who are, going to try to dox me. Don't, please. I'm just having fun with my friend Spence on December 23rd. But yeah, I mean, we could get there eventually, I think.
Oh, for sure. I golfed with Nate Bench and his cousin yesterday. That's Virgil and Turk Malloy right there. Yeah. That's the 2. That's all we need. We're off to a roaring start at this point with those 2 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, implore people to go watch the movies if they haven't in a while. They're very fun, incredible writing, incredible cast, and it makes Vegas look really cool. And Vegas is maybe my least favorite place in America. So maybe I just like to live vicariously through the mind and the outfits of George Clooney and Brad Pitt and so on and so forth.
See, this is why I can't have you on early in the show, because now I'm just going to be thinking about how we're going to put together an Ocean's 11 cast the rest of the show, and I've got a lot to do. So we'll move on from it, but my mind is kind of still back there for now. All right, CK, how about right off the top rope today, we do a little RSL as Anderson Julio has officially been traded after a really, really good year. We're going to do mostly college football, so everybody calm down. But RSL makes a sizable move today, and just wanted to get your take on it because I thought Anderson Julio, in several different difficult moments, played pretty well for my guy Pobbs last year.
He did. I mean, you can make an argument that for the second half of the season, he was RSL's most indispensable player when Chicho Arango's once MVP caliber season hit the skids. I mean, I think if you look at the move they made last week to bring in, I think it's Elias Manuel I think that's the proper pronunciation, but I'll work on that. I'll have to read the press release from our guy 3 Fits. But getting younger, probably taking on a cheaper contract, and figuring out a way to play differently. It is a somewhat surprising move, especially considering how awful of an end that Chicho had to the 2024 season. They're either really banking on him to, have another stellar season, or you never know, man. I mean, in this economy, as the kids say, anything can change in the blink of an eye. So I think if you're talking about a RSL front office that needed to make some moves on the periphery to shore up its, talented squad, it makes sense bringing in a younger, talented forward who I think had like a hat trick in the playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, for a team that made it to the MLS Cup final, and then bringing in another depth piece on the back line at the expense of Anderson Julio, of course. But yeah, I mean, this is just the way it goes. You have guys who have decent runs in, a jersey of your choice, and eventually the front office has to make some hard decisions on whether or not that person needs to be part of the club going forward, and how you balance the need for certain positions. And I don't think RSL is done by any means in this offseason, but it's a start that I think the RSL front office needed to do. They needed to be on the front foot, so to speak, so they didn't have to necessarily be up against it as they're preparing for the CONCACAF tournament here in January and February.
Should it be mandatory that Messi kind of has to play everywhere at least once or twice before he's done? Because they released the schedule, and I think there was some, tepid optimism maybe behind the scenes that Miami would be here, and they're not. So look, we know the deal. We know why they made the move, and hopefully at some point we can actually get data on Apple subscriptions besides Trey just guessing with no sources. But do you think with how much Messi means to the sport and the game, he should, be, I don't want to say forced, but they should put Miami in every stadium they can before he's done, yes?
Ooh, that's tough, man. There's too many teams, and the schedule is too wonky. The crossover games now, I think, between the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, I don't remember what the number is, but I think it's like 6 to 8. So like you're not going to get every team on the schedule for Miami, as we kind of are seeing the dwindling years of Lionel Messi. And I mean, I'm going to give Messi credit. When he's healthy, he plays. Like, yes, he wants to play. Yep. He's not necessarily big timing anybody. I think he played at Foxborough last year on turf. I think he played in Atlanta on turf. I think he played in Charlotte on turf. So like that whole scenario has been put to bed, but he's getting old, man. I think he's 36. He had an injury prone year with Copa last year, and then through the slog of an MLS season. It would be amazing to be able to get Messi at every away stadium in MLS, but unfortunately, we're living in an era of the league now, Spence, where there's just too many teams, and the schedule, I think, is just too difficult to figure that out in time to get him everywhere, with the fact that we're probably not going to have him for that much longer.
All right, moving off the RSL stuff and moving over to a little college football here. Let me just ask you, straight up, your thoughts on BYU Colorado in the Alamo Bowl coming up on Saturday. You've covered both teams. You've interviewed players and coaches from both sides. For my money, this might be the best non-CFP bowl game. Kind of excited for it. Obviously Shedeur, the odds-on number one pick, Travis Hunter, the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and a really good BYU team. And we'll see, both coaches have said all their guys are playing. We'll see if that is longer than a couple of series or what have you. Colorado's a 4-point favorite, but give me a Chris Kamrani hot Alamo Bowl take.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I was actually texting with one of my best buddies on Friday, whose dad is a Cougar Club member, and he's been going to games since he was a kid. And I said, I think you could make an argument that outside of these CFP games that are coming up this next round, BYU and Colorado could be the best bowl game of the season. From a competitive standpoint, from a talent standpoint, these are two teams that were right in the thick of things to win the Big 12 Conference the last weekend of the regular season. Now, they needed some things to go their way, and those things didn't go their way. But I think it's pretty rare to be able to have two teams of this caliber. I think Colorado going for a 10th win, BYU going for an 11th win, And then having potentially the top 2 picks of next year's draft is really cool. From a local point of view for us, it's going to be a huge test for a team that had a breakout season. Like I said, I'm fascinated to see how Travis Hunter does against BYU, just because I like watching Travis Hunter and I like watching BYU. And same thing with Shedeur Sanders. I know in this market, there isn't a bunch of love for Colorado and the Sanders crew, but I mean, haters are going to hate, as they say, Spence and the young parlance. But yeah, I'm with you wholeheartedly. I think this game has potential, and let's hope it lives up to it, because it could be really fun.
From your time down in Boulder, because I think there were a lot of people that were a little bit skeptical about Shedeur early on, just because he had played for his pop. Was he going to, be able to play P4 football? And then you see it and you're like, dude, he's really good. I mean, he's very, very special. He's going to make an NFL franchise very, very happy. The Raiders at one point, but they screwed it up and actually won over the weekend. What sort of personality is he? What sort of kid is he? What sort of NFL player do you think he's going to be based off of what you were able to learn when you were down there a couple of times?
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up. I actually wrote a story about that in late November, right before Thanksgiving, that kind of got caught up in the mud with the Thanksgiving holiday and whatnot. But I mean, for as much as people want to give Deion Sanders credit for putting together this roster, as he should get, Shedeur gets a tremendous amount as well, because he's like his dad. He is gregarious. He is outgoing. He is confident. He is unapologetically himself. And that rubs people the wrong way. Talking to guys who were recruiting Shedeur when he was out of high school said, like, this guy at 16 felt like the guy that he is now, which might be a little hyperbolic, but I mean, you can see that it's translated wherever he's gone. And there was a lot of questions of whether or not he could make that jump from, the FCS HBCU level to Power 4, starting quarterback. And listen, man, he's done everything that he's been asked to do. Now, he does have an offense that's tailored to his skill set specifically, which definitely helps. And he has the Heisman Trophy winner and a bunch of very talented wide receivers. He might have better receivers at Colorado, Spence, than he'll get if he's drafted by, say, the New York Giants, or even if the Raiders get him. Like, that's how good Colorado's wide receiver core is. So yes, they made him look good, and he made them look good. So when Colorado was terrible offensively last year from an offensive line point of view, he was the most sacked quarterback in the country. Shedeur hit the portal just like Deion and the other coaches. And, there was some offensive linemen who said that, like, as soon as my name went in the portal, I got like a call or a text from Shedeur, like, wanting to chop it up and get to know me. Like, everybody does that. I know that's not specific to him, but I think it matters when you're trying to build something the way Colorado did and has. And beyond Shedeur's tremendous senior year, like, it's going to be fascinating to see what Deion and Colorado look like without Shedeur and without Travis.
Aaron Roderick, in his media availability over the weekend, called Travis Hunter the best player he's ever seen. Our guy A-Rod. And I unlike you, who is a grinder, who studies the tape, because I know you're all about the tape, I can't necessarily corroborate that personally, but every time I lock in on him, it seems really unique. And, when you're doing this, as long as you and I have done this, when something looks different. And, more than 100 snaps per game over and over and over. And then he just casually shows up at the Colorado basketball game and is pulling out like 360 dunks.
Through the legs. Yeah, he was doing some through the legs.
It was amazing. That is so – just try doing that. Not even dunk. Just go jump and try to put a basketball between your legs. It's hard. But when you hear things, hyperbolic statements like that, like the greatest player he's ever seen, does that kind of jive with your idea of who Travis Hunter is as a football player?
I mean, if we're prisoner of the moment, it's hard not to agree, just because we've never seen anybody do what he was able to do this year. Like, he led the team in touchdowns. He has amazing catch radius, amazing ball skills. He made some catches that look like they're straight out of a video game. And then on the flip side, defensively, he's locking down the other team's best player. He's didn't have a bunch of tackles, but like I said last week, like, as Dion said, a Hall of Fame player, probably the best cornerback in the history of football. As a cornerback, you don't need a lot of tackles on your stat sheet because that means you're generally not a good cornerback because you have to make a lot of tackles. Travis didn't have to do that. And he had a legendary season, man. I mean, like, think about it. I think it was the Baylor game or some game early on in the season when they came back and won. Like, he forced a fumble at the goal line to end the game, like just with a tackle. So, like, beyond all of the highlight level interceptions and the touchdowns, like, he's also a dude that like knows just how to play fundamental football. And I know that sounds cliche, but like, this is a guy that did something that's never happened really in the sports history. And yeah, when I think about the best college football players that I've ever seen in my lifetime, it's like, Reggie Bush, Robert Griffin III, Tim Tebow, so on and so forth. But like, we've just never really seen a guy like Travis, and I don't know if we will. So everybody should appreciate him one last time when he suits up against BYU.
BYU got some really good news this week. Chase Roberts is coming back for his senior season. Chase feels like a pro to me, feels like an NFL talent with his size and speed. And they used him. I made this analogy earlier. It seemed like they used him like the way Utah wanted to use Bryant Keithy this year. He was everywhere. I mean, jet sweeps, reverses. I know I don't want to go too deep into the weeds with terminology, but you understand my point. So Chase is coming back. And then Hunter Clegg, who was a top 3 player in the state in 2023. You remember that 2023 Utah recruiting class on paper was just dynamite, and unfortunately, it really hasn't turned out to manifest itself for the most part when it comes to a lot of these young men. But Hunter Clegg has flipped his commitment from Utah to BYU after coming back from his mission. So give me your thoughts. 2 pieces of good news for BYU football this week.
I mean, huge news for Jake Retzloff. I mean, that was one of his primary go-to guys, along with Darius Lassiter. So I agree with you on Chase. Like, he is a guy that's a leader in that locker room, an indispensable player offensively because of his talent and his ball skills. And he is a guy that will be very fun to watch go against Travis Hunter in the Alamo Bowl. But the fact that he's coming back helps, BYU's returning quarterback immensely, as it does Aaron Roderick. BYU's had a good recruiting week. Let's be honest. I think they just landed the former Texas kid. They got Hunter Clegg. They are cleaning up, so to speak, as best as you can at BYU, because this is what happens when you go 10-2 in the regular season, and people are impressed with how you play and who coaches on your coaching staff. So I'm not surprised at all that Kalani and his group are able to recruit at the level that they are now, especially coming off of a tremendously successful season. I feel like too many times, Spence, we like make things too difficult, or we're trying too hard to get into the weeds of things. And oftentimes you just have to boil it down to success is going to be tantalizing to young people, to old people, to whomever. And if you're trying to build a program, it helps to have that tape, so to speak, so fresh in the minds of people who potentially want to come play for you.
So Utah at this point, according to 24/7 Sports, has the number 19 ranked incoming recruiting class with 12 additions. I don't know, man. So with BYU last year, they more or less relied on continuity and growth with the players they had on their roster. They made a few portal additions. BYU, according to 247 Sports, has 4 portal additions as of now. That could certainly change. But it feels like Utah is completely rebuilding. Like they've remade the quarterback room, more or less. Isaac's coming back, but they've got 3 new running backs. Wayshawn Parker, the number 2 back in the class, according to 24/7 Sports. This is all still pretty new to try to digest as far as what it could mean for Utah next year. But it's not a bad thing that they have a highly touted incoming class via the transfer portal. But what's realistic to expect? I have a hard time getting excited about classes on paper. I've never been a big signing day guy because all the coaches tell you they got everyone they wanted and they like the class coming in. But good news, top 20 class. But what is a reasonable expectation when it comes to what appears to be a total rebuild in 1 year for the Utes?
I guess I would tell Utah fans, if they were to ask me, and I know they don't because I'm not, a Ute insider anymore as I once was so proudly on the show, but you'll have to wait and see who shows up for fall camp, man. Like
Yep.
it sounds kind of like a defeatist, nihilistic attitude, but the way things are right now in college football, the way players can come and go as they please, I know it's frustrating for fans, but this is the reality, and you kind of have to just grin and bear it until the powers that be find a way to cowboy up and put some guardrails up and put a pseudo college football constitution together. Like, this could be easily done, Spence, if people wanted to get it done, but they just don't want to because it behooves some programs and some conferences and people who are a lot wealthier than others, more so than other people. So college football, not so much different from the real world, ironically. But I digress. Utah's transfer portal class so far, they landed Devin Dampier. They got Wayshawn Parker, two paramount positions that were necessary. But listen, man, like, we're to the point now where I think Utah fans are still living in this world where they think they're along the same lines of some of these other programs in the country where, like, just because you get somebody doesn't mean you need to, like, blow a balloon or, shoot off some confetti and celebrate. Like, a lot of these players are project players, Spence. Like, some of these guys are coming to Utah having played very, very sparingly at their previous spots. So I understand what state media around here is going to tell you. I understand that they're going to, prop up some of these guys as the next Britton Covey or the next Dalton Kincaid or wherever or whomever. But I would really ask Utah fans to take it with a grain of salt and go back and look at statistically what some of these players have done at their previous spots. For example, the last two commits that they got, the running back from UNLV, I think he had like 100-something yards total this year. The defensive end from Washington, I think he had like 8 total tackles. They might turn out to be great players, but Utah is not getting the same caliber of players that some of the quote-unquote blue blood programs around this country are getting. That's just the reality we live in right now. And I think, unfortunately, Utah fans were still living under the illusion that they were going to attract really premier talent because of who they are and what they are. One bad 5-7 season, Spence, has put a lot of pressure on this program. And as you're seeing, a lot of people leaving out the front door are better players than some of these new players coming in the back door.
Man, 2 days before Christmas, got a little Scrooge action going on to harsh
Is
the
it
mellow.
is it a Scrooge though?
No,
I mean,
it's
like,
not.
I'm just asking, for some honesty here. Like, that's at Christmas time, because like on our show Love Actually, at Christmas time, you tell the truth. And the truth is, right now Utah's in a tough spot.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Now, they did, swing for the fences with Devin Dampier, and they got him. They got Wayshawn Parker. Those are two paramount positions that they needed. I get it. But, like, who are these guys? Who's Devin Dampier going to throw to? They just lost the kid who had like 600 yards and 5 touchdowns as a freshman at Tulsa. They lost him to Colorado. Why? Why do you think? I'm just trying to tell the truth on the drive, man. That's all I'm here for.
And that's all we want. And I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just, I have a hard time cheering for a team on paper. I've got to see what it looks like. But a lot of work left to do for sure. We get all the Christmas shopping done. Santa ready to roll down the chimney.
I pray. Okay. I'm gonna cross all my fingers and toes. Yes.
All right, buddy. Well, thanks for all of your contributions on this little radio show all year. Am I allowed to say happy holidays? You're kind of a good North Star here. Is that okay to say?
Absolutely. Okay, you can say happy holidays. You can wish well on me in any language, in any sort of holiday you want. I'm here for it.
All right. Thanks, my friend. We'll chat soon, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Christopher Kamrani, staff writer at The Athletic. He's on social media, but truly, he posts less than I do, and I never post. But appreciate Chris's time. Misbehave with the clock, so we'll catch a break. And Neil Smith is going to join us coming up next for a little Utah Hockey Club, some NHL conversation. We're going to do some jazz with Tom Haberstroh. Don't forget, Ute legend Eric Weddle, 30 minutes from right now. A lot to do on a Monday. Keep it here on ESPN 700. battle today. Obviously, Super Bowl winner of football, one of the best to ever do it. Give the talk. We scout Tom Happenstorm gets you some NBA and some jazz, not some college football so far. We're back to college football in just a little bit. Let's do a little NHL. Hockey Club on a Monday afternoon. The guy is good enough to join us. Neil, happy Monday, sir. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Spence. Happy Monday, and looking forward to seeing the Utah Hockey Club redeem themselves against the Dallas Stars tonight.
Certainly, and that's the hope. But I got to say, Neil, they've been better as of late. And, during kind of the up and down calendar about a month ago, Coach Torney and all the players continued to talk about how they really did like the way they were playing, but the results just didn't really kind of come their way. They've been dynamite on the road, not so much at home, but at least a point in 8 straight games, and the results have started to come as they've won 8 of their last 10 now. 6 of their last 8 is the math there. They've won 6 of their last 8 games. What stands out about the improved play, or is it just continue to do the right things every day and hope that the results eventually come?
I think it's just that they got through a tough period and they started to correct a lot of different mistakes and they started getting more disciplined. And then I think that things started to click and they started to believe in themselves and believe in the system. And I think what got away from them last night was the fact that they were playing Anaheim and they got out to that 4-2 lead after 2 periods and thought, okay, this is money in the bank. And they sort of let up on the discipline a little bit. And it ends up that a tying goal goes in on the power play. The third goal that put Anaheim within reach was one that young Jackson Stauber thought that he had, but he didn't, and it scored it underneath and into the net. So, they got to show tonight that was an aberration. Shake that off. Get ready for Christmas by beating a team in Dallas that everybody thinks it counts as a contender for the Cup. And don't look now, but Utah is tied with them in points in the standings. So, a pretty darn good representation going into the Christmas break.
Tell us about this game tonight as the Stars are in town to take on the Hockey Club. As you referenced, prior to the start of the season, the Stars were, among the betting favorites, not just to win this division, but to potentially do something beyond that. And they haven't been bad. I mean, they're second in net in the division to Winnipeg, who's plus 44, which is so wild. And Dallas is plus 19. So tell us about the Stars. What's the Utah Hockey Club up against tonight?
Well, they're up against probably the top 3 goaltenders in the league. In Ottinger is really a top goaltender. But the good news is that they've made hay at home. Dallas has in their own rink. They're 13-5, and on the road they're under 500. So Utah should try to take advantage of that and take advantage of the fact that Dallas is on the road, and that in a game like this, the players on the opposition are just looking to get back on the bus, back on the plane, and get home for Christmas. And so try to really take advantage of that and come out really hard on a team that probably just wants to get the game over with and go home.
So far, and I'll give you a lot of credit for this, because when you just look at the raw numbers, Clayton Keller leads the team in points with 13 goals and 22 assists, and he is the captain. I want to kind of revisit the conversation we had prior to the season, because you were the one that said this is the player to watch out for and had a good year this year. As far as the way he has improved and continued to evolve, when it's fully baked, when Clayton Keller is at his peak and in his prime, because he's still very young, what sort of player do you think he will be? How bright can that star shine?
I think he can shine very bright. I think he's a real good young player. I've always liked him since he got into the league, and he's been playing in Phoenix up until this year on a team that was a perennial non-playoff team. So it was darn hard for him to get any recognition around the league. But if you watched Arizona play, you would notice number 9 quite a bit. So I think naming him captain was probably a real stepping stone for him. And then this year, I think representing the club to Salt Lake City in the first year there has been a real bonus for him. But his play is elevating, and getting a guy like Gunther on the team as well, who's putting a lot of pucks in the net, and they feel like they're very good offensively, and they are. And the thing that they've got to watch for, Spence, and this is interesting tonight, is they're on a big run, and they've got some bad habits late in the last game. And they can't let those habits morph over into tonight's game, or else that could start a negative spin. They want to get back on that positive spin. Forget about the third period they had last night and get back to playing the way they were playing. And I think they'll do that.
So as of late, and every great hockey team has to have depth, but it does feel like, Neil, from my vantage point, the Utah Hockey Club a little bit top heavy. Their third line has scored 4 points in 10 games, and Coach Torney was asked about this, and he talked about potentially making some changes. And again, the top two lines have been really, really good, but the depth does seem to be a little bit compromised when you get down to your third line there. I know it's not your first or second line, but how much of a concern is that right now for Coach Turney and the Utah Hockey Club, that when their depth is tested, it doesn't seem to have so far be what they were hoping that it would be down on that third line?
Well, you know what? The third line is normally your checking line and your line that shuts down other teams' top lines. And if they're doing that and they're very responsible defensively and they're chipping in a goal every now and then, you're okay, because then you let your big boys on the first two lines go out and do the offense. It's if you're getting scored on the third line and you're not producing any offense that it gets very worrisome. We can't expect this team to have everything right away, because that's why they weren't in the playoffs the last few years. But I think it's all coming together, and I think they've got a lot of, as I keep saying, they've got a lot of good young guys. I don't think we need to worry too much about the third line not scoring. I think we need to concern ourselves with the top two lines continuing to score, and the third line being a line that's very responsible defensively and chips in a goal here and there.
You also, we had you on, I think, the week after they made the move to get Mikhail Sergachev, who has been amazing. I mean, we talked about Keller because the numbers as far as stats go and points go, but Mikhail Sergachev might be the MVP of this team. What stands out most about the type of fit that he's been after Bill Armstrong made that move?
Well, the thing that he's done that he didn't do as much of, because he got overshadowed in Tampa by guys like Victor Hedman, who are world-class players. Sergachev's offensive abilities didn't come out nearly as much in Tampa as they have in Utah. And I think given the opportunity to show good offensive play, he's done that. I mean, he's gotten 6 points in his last 4 games, including that OT winner that he got his 8th goal of the season against Vancouver. So, I mean, Sergachev does a lot of things well. He sometimes will get beat defensively because he's taking a chance here and there, but he's got good toughness. He's not afraid, and he's also got some good offense. And I think it's a steal for Bill Armstrong, really, to get him to Utah. I thought it at the time. I wasn't sure if Tampa was concerned because he got injured twice last year, or what there might have been a cap issue for them. And Tampa's doing okay without him, so I guess they made the right moves. But I think he's been a super addition for Utah.
So I know we revisit this every week, but it seems like oftentimes even Bill Armstrong himself, references the spot they're in to potentially bring in reinforcements should they need to with their draft capital and their relatively clean books. And we're just going to keep revisiting it, Neil, because the trade deadline isn't until, I think it's the first week of March. I know it's after the NBA. So they've been better as of late, so maybe it's a moot point. But as the club continues to kind of traverse their way through and hopefully be in the mix for a wild card, maybe playoff spot down the stretch, any thoughts about whether or not Bill and his staff should look to maybe make some additions?
I think they should, if they can do it without sacrificing any of the future, because the future is still bright for this group, and taking away from the future, in other words, trading draft picks or trading young players that aren't currently on the team, I don't think would be advisable at this stage where they're at now. I think if they can add something, to get somebody else out of a cap situation or to do something that it's only a money move, I think they should do that and try to solidify a playoff berth, because that would be great for the franchise, being the first year in Utah and being able to make the playoffs and getting everybody in the community really excited. So I think that would be advisable, but don't do anything that circumvents the long-term plan of building with the young players that you've got.
As the season continues to unfold, we're about 35, 36 games played for most teams. Any intel on potential moves that could be made elsewhere teams that maybe aren't off to a great start that might just look to change direction, or teams that are surprising the league that might benefit from a veteran addition here or there? What are some likely teams that could make moves, and maybe some players that could be on the move that would actually change the landscape of the league a little bit?
Well, I think you got to look at Nashville and figure out what they're going to do, because they're a disaster after spending a ton of money in the offseason on people like Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're way down in the Central Division, and so they're going to have to do something at some point. You talked about plus minus before. They're the worst plus minus in the entire conference, the second worst in the entire conference at minus 26. So I think Barry Trotz will probably do something there. I think as you see teams falling out of it and knowing that they're just not going to make it, you'll start to see some moves. You saw one with Anaheim where Cam Fowler went to St. Louis Blues, a longtime player for the Ducks, played 996 games for the Ducks and was traded over to St. Louis. So I think things like that will start to happen as teams decide, okay, they're not going to make it and they better do what they got to do now. But one team that I'm sure is going to have to do something is Nashville, because their plans have just not worked out at all. And the other team is our old team too, Spence, the Rangers, who looked pitiful again today in a 5-0 loss in New Jersey. You know how bad that is when you lose in New Jersey, when you're the Rangers and half the building has Ranger jerseys on, and you come out and lay an egg and get 12 shots and get shut out 5-0 by your Cross River rival. That's a really bad day for the Rangers. So, something's going to explode there sooner or later. They didn't dress Chris Kreider for today's game. They called him a healthy scratch. He's the most tenured guy on the team and somebody that all the fans adore. So I don't quite know what they're doing there, Spence, but it is not working, whatever they're doing.
Think the coach is in trouble? I mean, I don't know. It's the weird thing about Dolan is at this point he's building spheres, and trying to play, he wants to be the opening act for the Eagles as opposed to caring about his basketball or his hockey team. But do you think that coach could be in trouble if the Rangers keep going in the wrong direction?
Oh, I think most definitely. And when I say that because that's just the way of the league. I don't say it against Peter Laviolette or the job he's doing or done. He did a phenomenal job last year, but when your team is disappointing your fans and they're paying tons of money to go to the games and buy your merchandise and all that, unfortunately, it's just the way it is in sports. Somebody's head has to roll, and I'm sure it's going to be Laviolette either during the season or at the end of the season, because this is a disastrous year for the Rangers.
Does it say anything? It probably doesn't, because home ice advantage is just not as prevalent as home court advantage. The Utah Hockey Club 11-6-2 on the road, but 5-5-4 at home. But if you look at the standings, I mean, Vancouver 6-7-5 at home, 10-3-2 on the road. Like it's somewhat common for teams to find success away from home in a way that in basketball it's a little bit more rare. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, and does it say anything to you that our hockey club here in Salt Lake really is good on the road, but kind of so-so here at home?
Well, they're 500 at home, and what's really, I wanted to point that out, that this team was really good playing in that miniature building in Arizona the last 2 years. They had a really good home record. I don't have it in front of me or can't quote it, but playing at the Mullet Arena, they had a real good home ice advantage there. And they should have a good home ice advantage in Utah, because most of the teams that come in there to Salt Lake City, it's their first time in. They've never been in the building. They don't know it. It's a very cozy building from what I understand. I haven't been in there, but 11,000 unobstructed seats and probably pretty loud when they get going. So it should give them more of an advantage than it's giving them, but they're making up for it for a good road record, that's for sure. And so, I hope that they can turn that home record around, because the fans, when you think about it, what do the fans want? The fans want to see a win at home, right? If you lose on the road, well, maybe they didn't stay up to watch it anyway. Maybe they did, but you don't want to disappoint them many times in your own building. That's where you want to really, make people happy, is when you play in front of your own fans.
All right, Neil, before I set you loose, because, every time I pull up the standings and look at the net, look at the differential, like Winnipeg at plus 44 is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
133 goals scored, 89 goals allowed. They're second in the division defensively to Dallas. They're the best offensive team in hockey, and they just continue to keep rolling. Just the latest. Are you surprised that they haven't really had any regression of the mean?
No, they went in. They had a little 10-game. They went great for the first 15. They sort of set back a little bit in the middle 10 and went 3-7 or something like that. Now they're back off like gangbusters again. Today they went into Toronto and handled Toronto Maple Leafs in their own building really easily. I think it was 4-1 was the final score. So yeah, they just keep going, and they seem to have it all, including probably the best goalie in the league because he won the Vezina last year, is Connor Hellebuck. And they're just a phenom right now, the Winnipeg Jets. So it's it'll be interesting to see how long they can keep it up, or are they for real, and are they a team that can do this right through and into the playoffs?
All right, Neil, where can all of our new hockey fans in the market find the great podcast that you do?
Well, you can find it on any podcast platform. Amazon, Spotify, Apple, any of them, YouTube, even if you want to watch it. But it's been a lot of fun this week. We're doing one actually tomorrow morning because there's 10 games today, and then there's nothing for 3 days. So we'll lay off for a while. But it's been a lot of fun. I think that every episode gives people something that they didn't know before, so that some information that's new to them, and as I said, we have a lot of fun with it, and we hope a lot of people in Salt Lake City will be able to find it and enjoy it.
Neil, thank you, sir. Have an excellent week. Very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you and yours, okay?
Merry Christmas to you and everybody back home and with your dad, mom, and all your siblings.
For sure. Thank you, sir. We'll chat soon.
Thank you.
All right, the great Neil Smith, former general manager of the Rangers and the Islanders, lead scout for the Detroit Red Wings once upon a time. That's brought to you today by my friends at Overtime Cards and Collectibles, which is the best spot for all of your football, basketball, hockey, MMA, and even Pokemon card collecting. You can buy all your favorites there and even take your cards in. Maybe you have some rare cards in your collection you don't even know about. Holiday season, you guys need a last-second stocking stuffer. Say that 10 times fast. Check out an Overtime Cards gift card. That is the perfect gift this holiday season. They have all the best trading cards and collectibles around. Go check them out online at overtimecardsandcollectibles.com, where you can buy and trade. All right, before we bring in Eric Weddle to start the 4 o'clock hour, let's welcome in Jeff from Farmer and Chemist on a Monday. Jeff, happy Monday, sir. How are we doing?
Happy Monday. Great. How are you?
I'm well. So, Farmer and Chemist, okay, a lot of excellent products available to cure and help a lot of things that people suffer from. Let's start with sleep, because that's what I utilize your products for, and they've been very, very helpful. Jeff, how can you help our listeners get some more sleep this holiday season?
Yeah, what we've learned from the science over the last few years is when we combine different what are called cannabinoids, and so CBD is just one cannabinoid. There's another one called CBN, and we put those two together, and there is a ton of evidence, and what we've seen is it's really good for sleep. It also helps with anxiety. And this time of year can be very stressful, and so now would be actually a great time to try it if you're struggling with sleep or anxiety.
How about struggling with muscle soreness? The problem solved, SALVED, that you guys gave me. I keep it in my golf bag, and I actually used it yesterday because I got a little tennis elbow situation going on. So how can you help people that are struggling with muscle soreness?
Yeah, similar to combining different cannabinoids. We combine CBG with CBD, and it's a great anti-inflammatory, and it helps with pain. So a lot of people go up first time skiing, they're a little sore, so put in a little problem salve on there, helps a lot. If you have arthritis or other things, then you can take it in different forms, so drops. And so that's part of it. It's just we want people to come in, talk to us, and we'll find the right route, the right combination, the right dose. There's definitely science to it.
How about our little furry pets? We all love our dogs, and if you have a dog that might be a little bit anxious in social situations, you guys have a product that can help out the dogs, yeah?
Yeah, they have the same emotions we do, and they sense anxiety, and they, have problems sleeping things too. So, yeah, there are either treats you can use that kind of help reinforce behavior, but also have CBD in it. We also have drops that you can put in their food, and it helps almost the same way as it works in humans.
All right, Jeff, before I set you loose, tell our listeners how they can get more information and the special offer you have for them this holiday season.
Yeah, come see us. We're in Midvale, right in the center of the valley, or at farmerandchemist.com. And either way, if you mention ESPN 700, we will take 20% off an order. And we are also offering 10% off of a gift card through the holidays. So if you buy a gift card and then use it with mentioning ESPN, then you can get 30% off an order.
All right, Jeff. Thank you, sir. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas, all the good stuff, and we'll chat soon.
Happy holidays to you. Thank you.
All right, 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Eric Weddle starts our 4 o'clock hour. Coming up next, right here on ESPN 700. Do a little NBA coming up in just a bit. Tom Haberstroh is going to stop by. Utah Jazz seeing an old friend tonight, Donovan Mitchell and the Cleveland Cavaliers. That game will tip off at 5 o'clock. Jazz won a couple of straight games on the road against two teams that aren't very good, Detroit and Brooklyn, two teams that are kind of in the same spot the Jazz are. The Cavs have been, oh, my goodness. I was afraid of this. You know, as we've talked about throughout the course of Jazz history, oftentimes the good players that end up leaving don't recapture what they had while they were here. Hayward got hurt, of course. Darren Williams, by his own admission, probably should have stuck around and been a better playmate in the sandbox. He went to the New Jersey Nets and was good. I mean, Darren's awesome, but never really did there what he did here. Was one of the best lead guards in pro basketball for about 4 years. But you just kind of had this suspicion that Donovan was going to go somewhere and do Donovan things, and he has been really good this year. He's about 23 points, about 5 boards, 5 assists, over a steal and a half a game. Those are the numbers that he just typically puts up. You know, he's shooting 40% from three. He's taking 9 threes a game, 45% from the floor. Down from the free throw line a little bit. He's relying more on jump shots as opposed to attacking the rim like he did a lot when he was here. But Jazz have been better as of late. There's no doubt about that with a couple of wins, and it's just going to be a long, difficult season for the Utah Jazz, but celebrate the wins when they show up. So we'll do some more college football as well. The latest on the transfer portal for Utah, for BYU, in case you missed it. Keanu Tanavasa announced today that he is headed into the transfer portal. We had Brandon Huffman on earlier. Brandon does a really, really good job for 24/7 Sports as their national recruiting expert. And he said Florida and Texas apparently very interested in Keanu Tanavasa. I know there's some online rumors that Tanavasa might be on his way to Brigham Young. No idea if that's the case. Of course, this comes on the heels of the announcement made last week that Cameron Calhoun was heading to Tuscaloosa. So, you know, sometimes you hear transfer portal stuff, really not that big of a deal. And then there are other times where you see a name announced on social and it stings. And, of course, Cameron Calhoun, Keanu Tanavasa, two linchpins for Morgan Scalley's defense a year ago. And nothing official yet for Tanavasa. If anything comes our way, we'll let you know. Also talked to Brandon about Cam Rising, and there's nothing official about Cam Rising now that the quarterback room is starting to take shape a little bit. Devin Dampier, the New Mexico transfer, of course, Isaac Wilson will be back in that room. Porter, wonder if you, from your end, have received any intel or can kind of add a little color or context to the conversation about Cameron. Look, I don't begrudge any of these players for going somewhere where they can make some money to continue to play football. It's that you have to kind of change your paradigm and knock your old school perspective out when it comes to this stuff. Yeah, it would be his 8th year of college football. And, of course, the great Tommy Boy line. A lot of people go to school for 8 years. Yeah, they're called doctors. But anything on your end with the latest as far as what Cam's plans will be next season?
No, man. I think that's a tough one because when you're a player like a different Cam and Cam Calhoun or a Keanu Tanavasa, there's film on you from 2 weeks ago, right? And there's a lot, maybe not 2 weeks ago, but 3-4 weeks ago. There's recent film on you that teams can go and look at. There is, you're a known commodity. With Cam Rising, I think people know he can play quarterback, and there is a market for him regardless of where he lands. I do know there are teams that are interested in, but I don't know exactly how high that goes on the college football hierarchy, right? When we're talking about is Cam going to take a step down to play at a G5 school to be the starter, maybe coming off of a knee injury that kept him out, Spence, for almost 2 seasons, right? That's really the question mark is there a team out there that is ready to take on maybe not a project as far as the development goes, but a guy who you just don't know what he's going to bring you on the field. And because of his notoriety, because of what he's done at the University of Utah at the P5 level, and because of the money he's made, he's going to be requiring some sort of NIL promise. So you combine that with the fact that it's mostly smaller schools that are going after Cam, and there's really kind of a bidding war, if you will, going on. And I don't know that there's any big name notable schools on that list, and that's interesting to me for a quarterback that has won 2 Power 5 titles and I think has some good football left in front of him. I think it's odd that there's not much attention, but it does make sense when you consider that he's really not been able to be on the football field for 2 calendar years now.
Yeah, like I said, if somebody's going to write him a check to play football, I mean, it's better than trying to hit the real world to try to, get a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car or whatever. So nothing, not to say Cam couldn't get into coaching or do something beyond that, and not to say there's anything wrong with working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I had to use them a couple of months ago. They were lovely. So I'm not diminishing the importance of that endeavor. As far as what we know, Jalen Glover has transferred officially to UNLV. That came down last week. Samote Pepa signed at UW. He's going to go to Washington, and we're still waiting for a lot of the official word. Carson Ryan ended up at Brigham Young. Cameron Calhoun, like I said, Tuscaloosa. And then that news that came down today, Keanu Tanavasa. Any idea, Porter, whether or not BYU is legitimately in the mix here? I mean, I'll just go, when it comes to this stuff, guys like Brandon Huffman, guys that do it full-time, I completely concede to them because this has become a full-time job. Once upon a time, in my seat, I just have to know enough to ask the questions, but I'll just trust them. And Brandon said Florida and Texas. You think BYU's in the mix for Keanu?
Well, I can tell you that they recruited him heavily out of high school, right? It was BYU, it was Utah, it was a few schools out on the coast that were really, really hot on the heels of Keanu Tanavasa as a high school recruit. And once he became, once word came out that he was maybe available on the market, I can tell you that BYU is very much interested. I can tell you that BYU has made contact with him. And that may have been before this stuff today. But what I can also tell you is that Brandon Huffman is right. There is big schools. He mentioned Texas and Florida. I'll also add Michigan on that list as well as schools that have looked into potentially courting Keanu Tanavasa away from Utah. And listen, when you are a all-conference performer at the P4, P5 level, whatever you want to call it, you're going to get that kind of attention. And I understand and empathize with Utah fans who are frustrated, especially when you're getting the back and forth on the social media thing. I think a wise thing for 18, 19, 20-year-olds to do is just don't do that, right? Handle your business, announce you're in the portal, decide where you're going to go. Don't go back and forth every day on social media because although you are 18, 19, 20 years old and, you can do that, do your thing, it's not going to play well for the fans who are very active on said social media. And, I empathize with them, but I also see why maybe there's some pushback on the behavior of fans. It's the new reality, Spence. And Keanu Tanavasa, of course, is one of the better players in the conference, is receiving a lot of attention now in the portal.
Yeah, and also, if I could add to this, I'll just repeat the moniker that you can always not tweet.
Yes, that goes for players, fans, everybody involved. I think that can be true for.
I just feel like not enough people know that that's an option. You can not. You know what? Got some advice a number of years ago that has served me pretty well to this day. If you're upset with someone, if you're in a bit of a pickle, write the email, write the letter, and then don't send it.
Save it. Maybe don't even save it as a draft.
So just get it out. Get it out of your system. Write it. Write all the nasty things that you want to write, and then don't send it. So maybe save it in the drafts.
What is the website that Creed had?
Oh,
on
Creed,
The Office.
//creedsthoughts.com or so. Ryan created it for him.
Just set up a domain.
You know what?
Send it there.
We should start a service for the biggest idiots on social media that seem to cause problems for the Ute fan base. And just tell them that they can send us their tweets and we'll put them in a spot. They pay us a monthly fee. And that way we are all saved from reading and hearing about the garbage that goes through your mind.
And just to be clear, every fan base has its detractors, but
it's been quite a year for Ute fans online.
It's been bad. And now you're having players who are currently on your roster talk about it being bad, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, those are players who are transferring. I understand it. Those are now players who are getting paid, and money is a part of it. You can be frustrated at them. I will not take that right away from you. I don't know, but just understand that you're trying to recruit players as well. And maybe publicly going at the players who are currently in your program or leaving your program, not exactly the most beneficial thing for your fan base.
Well, and also, I just think we're past the time as far as like we now are seeing children who are simply raised with cell phones as their babysitter, as their best friend, grow into adulthood. NBA coaches talk about it all the time. They roll into the locker room at halftime, and all the players are on their phones at halftime of an NBA game. So we're past the point of return to tell these young people, like, hey, stay off your phone, because they're so, like, almost addicted to it. It's part of their persona because it's not their fault. It's how they were raised. So you need to consider that dynamic as a fan before you go at a player, because they're going to see it. So, like, when Coach Witt says, I don't see the things on social, I buy that. Right. He's a man in his mid-60s, okay? But you're not going to convince me that any of these young men who are playing college football are not looking at their mentions and looking at their socials, because it's part of who they are. It's a generational thing. So if you're a Ute fan, if you're a BYU fan, if you're, a Jazz fan or an RSL fan, you should know that what you send to these young men, it will get back to them. It's like the whole Cam Rising stuff this year when everyone's like, well, Cam would be like, I don't really see that stuff. Yeah, you do. And you know his teammates who see it go talk to him about it, because Cam took a lot of unfair, unnecessary flack
100%
from angry people that use the internet to feel brave this year. And when you become painted as that as a fan base, it will have an adverse effect on who wants to come play for you. It just will.
And listen, I think it is much like most fan bases. It's a very, very loud minority, a small minority of the fan base. But man, like whatever allowed it to get to a point where, and I obviously the landscape of college football has something to do with this, whatever allowed it to get to a point where it did during the season, I think it does have an effect on the players, and it will have an effect on future players. Spence, I was born in this thing called the 90s, right?
I was an adult in the 90s, so slow your roll.
There was no iPads. There was no iPhones. I know I'm not like a 60-year-old guy, as you mentioned with Kyle Whittingham, but I do feel a difference with the people who are like 10 years younger than me, like a bigger generational shift than I have with like people even your age. It's different, dude. Like when you say they're raised on those devices, it's part of that person, and I don't understand it as much as I think some of the younger kids do. But you do have to, I think, gauge how you use whatever medium it may be, when you're talking to kids who you want to play at your school, or you allegedly want to play at your school, because it is having an effect on college football, and I think specifically here this year, it's been more noticeable than maybe other places, even though I will acknowledge it happens everywhere around the country.
Well, and it's also in fairness, because I don't want to crack on a fan base who, to your point, I believe the majority of people are decent and nice to each other and are welcoming to people that go to Rice-Eccles Stadium. But it has been a perfect storm of sorts over the past couple of years, of injuries, of maybe lack of overall performance to the level that all of us were expecting. And by the way, they were expecting too. There's the chaos that was involved with the collapse of the Pac-12 and George Kliavkoff, not being able to see around corners, and just an utter failure from leadership of the conference that allowed it to crumble right before our eyes. And so you trade the Pac-12 footprint for the Big 12 footprint that I will continue to say just isn't as appealing to a lot of people, me included. But you find a soft landing space and a fan base that decided to get pretty chesty online about dominating that conference year one. And then suddenly you're getting your heads kicked in and you lose 7 straight football games, for the first time, 8 straight football games for the first time in forever. I mean, injuries, lack of performance, juxtaposed to high expectations. And then a coaching staff that's in flux, where you have this weird succession plan that's in place, but Logan Roy's not ready to give up the network yet. And you have to wonder what the oldest son is thinking when it's going to be his time. You make a change at offensive coordinator that I just never thought was the right thing to do. I mean, ultimately, OCs are usually the ones that fall on the swords first. But Mike Bajakian says during his first media availability, like, hey, this is Andy's system. Like, the system is the system. It's in place. And I'm like, well, okay, Mike, then what are you going to be able to do with it that Andy couldn't himself? And if Morgan takes the head job, who do you bring as the defensive coordinator? You hire a new offensive coordinator. And it's been a little bit of a perfect storm. And also, quite frankly, all of us, whether you're a college football fan, whether you're a member of the media, we're still getting used to what the sport is now because it's different than it was even a calendar year ago. And it will be different next year than it was this year because of all of the criticism the sport has taken over a myriad of different things, including how they crown their national champ. Now, we seem to have forgotten that during the BCS or 4-team playoff era, there were plenty of blowouts too. Like, I don't know this overreaction about blowouts over the weekend, like it used to happen with the 4-team setup as well. And as I've always said, when they moved to 12, people would complain about who teams 13 through 16 are and why they didn't get in. And ultimately, this is furthering, and I don't know that this is a bad thing. Let me be clear. But I think all the belly aching about the format and the auto bid stuff does have to go. I'm not a huge fan of the earn your buy, okay? And I'm not a huge fan of the auto bid stuff. And yes, I do believe winning conference championships should matter. It's a delicate balance they have to find because one thing you cannot do with college football is dilute the regular season. It's what makes it different. That to me is the main thing, in addition to some other ancillary things that football figured out gambling far before it was legal pretty much nationwide. But the urgency of every game is what makes football different than basketball or baseball or soccer or hockey. So you cannot dilute the regular season. You cannot do it. You cannot make it a moot point. You can't make it irrelevant. But what this is furthering, transfer portal, free agency open during the season, it's the dumbest thing, man. It's just so stupid. Can you imagine, okay, prior to the start of the playoffs, Lamar Jackson just announcing he was leaving the Ravens? How do you have free agency open when the season is still going on? That in itself is lunacy. The lack of regulation because the NCAA has its hands tied. Like, they cannot enforce anything because, first of all, they're morons. Second of all, legally, they were thrown out of court, called serial antitrust violators and said, go figure it out. Now they can't enforce anything. So there is nothing in place with guardrails or regulations to make this an even playing field. There just isn't. And that can't continue. It's not sustainable. But what this is going to do as far as moving up the timeline, in my opinion, is the SEC and the Big Ten eagerly taking their ball and going home. Like, if you're going to freeze, this is probably their mentality. If you're going to freeze out blue bloods and banner institutions from the two best conferences in college football in the name of SMU getting smoked or ASU getting a bye, if you're going to do that, we're going to start our Super League with our two conferences. We're going to take all the revenue, and you guys can deal with what's left over. Like, that is already the direction we're going. But the inability or unwillingness or whatever it is from the people in charge to get this thing going in the right direction with healthy things in place to ensure not just immediate success, but the future of the sport is bright, will ultimately cause it to fracture. And maybe that fracture won't be a bad thing for a lot of schools, but what does that mean for Utah and BYU continues to be the question about whether or not they're on the right side of delineation when all this goes down. But it's just been amazing to me to see the lack of action with basic things that are obvious to anybody who watches the sport or covers the sport, let alone who's involved with the sport. But the power of the sport itself is that the numbers will continue to be awesome because the game itself is incredible. The unpredictable nature, week in and week out, of what we're going to see every weekend in college football puts it, to me, in a category all by itself. So you've got to figure out a way to fix this format to make sure everybody is happy, the best of your ability, but also not dilute the regular season and diminish the importance of every single weekend. Now, when we do move into the new reality of this league that pretty much looks like the NFL, it will solve the week in and week out matchup issues. We'll have brand names going at it with each other every single weekend, which will only be a good thing. But I just think what we've seen so far this season, with minor changes and tweaks to what it was a year ago, indicates how far the business of college football still has to go to ensure its immediate success and to ensure that the future is very, very bright. We'll get back to college football coming up in just a little bit. A lot of news to get to with a bunch of guests before we say goodnight at 6 for some Monday Night Football. But let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. Okay, this holiday season, we could all use a little extra cash, right? So more affordable options than you have right now. If you think you're spending too much money on cable, you are. But also internet options, wireless options, in addition to the aforementioned cable options, all more affordable. All you have to do is dial 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
That's all you got to do, and it's so easy to save money. And guys, the promotions are good, and Dish has this promotion where the price is locked in, and it won't change. And this is big because, as we've seen, guys, the past several months, maybe 4 months, it's like fiber went up 20%. DirecTV had a huge increase. Cable had a huge increase, and now YouTube TV even got smacked with a massive increase, and I want to tell you, these are going to keep coming. YouTube TV, same price, and right now this offer, you can get a bigger, faster DVR. You don't have to worry about your stuff auto-deleting. It'll auto-record your games, auto-hop commercials, and guys, here's the thing. We'll throw in Netflix free for the next 2 years. That is huge. It really is. And this is the ad-free version. This isn't the cheapy version. This is the good one. If you have Netflix, this is a huge plus because you can save $370+. Call us up, upgrade, get the best equipment out there, the best price when you call the Dish Pros. We'll have you installed as early as next day. Still have some spots for tomorrow morning, but otherwise after Christmas, if you're getting a new TV for Christmas, we can come out and install that for you if you'd like. We guarantee the best price, plus we've got these great offers with internet. Upgrade, save money. Call us now, 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
All right, there he is, Ryan from the Dish Pros. Our buddy Tom Haberstroh stops by for some NBA, and then we'll do a bunch of college football on the 5 before we say goodnight at 6 for Monday Night Football, the Packers and the Saints. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we're back to a little college football and some pro football in the 5 o'clock hour. We are your home of the NFL in this market. So Monday Night Football tonight. Packers and the Saints. Jordan Love plays his college ball, Utah State. So stay tuned for that. But Wilton, Connecticut's own Goose brought you in there, the band Goose from Wilton, Connecticut. And there's a reason for it, because hailing from Staples, Connecticut, I suppose Westport is more accurate, our guy Tom Haberstroh on a Monday afternoon. Tommy, happy Monday. How we doing?
Doing well. Go Wreckers.
It is Westport, right?
Yeah, Westport, and Staples High School is just a public school in Westport. So
that's right.
It's funny. People are always like, "Oh, that's a private school," just thinking it's Westport, so it's got to be a private school. But nope, public school right here. You know.
Well, I mean, I can't relate to you Westport snobs. I wasn't raised in the lap of luxury like you were, Tom, as you know.
Okay, now. Okay. All right. I hear you.
Right. Fair enough. Hey, Tom, the red-hot Utah Jazz, okay, 2 straight wins. 2 straight wins for the Jazz. Now, look, it's Brooklyn who's rebuilding and Detroit who's not good, but let's give them a little love, okay? 2 straight road wins for the Jazz.
Man, really refreshing to see after what happened against the Clippers just before that. It helps to play Brooklyn and Detroit, but, when you're talking about the Utah Jazz this year, any win that you can get is a moment of celebration. So when you're talking about these 2 teams, the Detroit Pistons and Brooklyn Nets, they are both overachieving this year. They are kind of what Utah was last year, where it was like, do we really want to be 11-17, or would we rather be 6-20? And the Jazz, to their credit, they've picked this path. They've got a couple guys who are playing well right now. John Collins, he's a 50-40-90 candidate who's in many ways having a career year. And Lauri Markkanen, when he's got it going, man. They're tough to beat. And so against Detroit, when you have Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen dropping 57 points between them, and I know Colin Sexton had a double-double in the wrong way, but 30 points from him, Keontae George, 28. This is a team that, you look at the names on the team and you look at the coaching and you're like, why aren't they better than what they are? A lot of it is defense, and over the last couple games, they've been able to hold their own on that end of the floor. Certainly better than the previous 3 games where they gave up about 140 points every night. So a much better performance as of late, and they will get a little bit of an awakening tonight against Cleveland.
Yeah, and we'll get there in a moment. That game tips off in about 23 minutes from right now. But please tell me, Tom, this team isn't good enough to go win 35 games and draft at 9 or 10. Please tell me that they're not good enough to do that.
If Markkanen and Collins and Walker Kessler, if they play every single night, they are probably trending towards 30 wins. But I don't suspect you'll see Lowry play every single night. And I suspect John Collins will be a hot commodity at the trade deadline, probably for a couple second-round picks, and maybe a heavily protected first-round pick the way he's playing now. But if those two players are still playing every night come March and April, they are going to be, a 25-30 win team playing at that level. But, they haven't played like that this season. The defense has been really, really tough to watch. But over the last 2 games, they've put it together enough that they come out with 2 really nice wins.
All right, so over the weekend, I was accused of being too negative in my coverage with the Jazz by somebody who I actually like and respect, not an angry person online. They're 7-20, all right? They were 5-20 prior to the past two wins. So I want you to tell me a positive story about the Jazz, where they're at. Give Jazz fans some hope. It's Christmas week. It's holiday week. I was told I'm being too negative about the Jazz, so I'm trying to not Scrooge it this week. Give us some hope, Tom, about what the future could hold if the Jazz are able to execute this rebuild correctly.
Well, I think we should start with John Collins here. Just, very under the radar, good season from this guy who kind of reinvented himself after the Atlanta Hawks when he was a guy that was looking like a fringe all-star player who averaged 20 and 10 for the Hawks as a 22-year-old, comes into Utah as part of that trade and is like, finding himself. wasn't really sure of his place on the team. And then this year has really stepped up his three-point shooting 42% from downtown. And a guy that, coming out of Wake Forest, I believed in his jump shot. He had a much better looking jump shot than what he showed at Wake Forest in terms of the numbers. And I thought that he projected as a spacing four in the NBA, and he's developed that for Utah in Will Hardy's system. And he's averaging per 36, he's averaging 21 points and 10 rebounds and 3 assists. The 3 assists is a career high. He's doing a little bit of the playmaking that I think we wondered about with John Collins, whether he's just a rim runner and dunker who can, park in the corner and shoot threes every once in a while and give you some rebounding. But the playmaking is something that's been a nice surprise for me, is seeing that John Collins right now is picking up a couple of these assists, 3 assists a game, in a way that he's kind of this short roll, move the ball guy that we didn't see in Atlanta very much, because he was, pigeonholed as a rim running four. And he's not big enough to play 5, but John Collins, being a 50-40-90 guy, essentially, at this stage of his career, I think it's a testament to the shot selection under Will Hardy. And, I think just this is a really good thing for the Blazers. I'm getting ready for the Blazers game tonight. The Jazz, looking at the Jazz and saying, like, all right, if a veteran comes in here, he can kind of rehabilitate his trade value and still perform at a high level. And maybe he gets traded to a contender, and that can be kind of like a way station for some people. If you come to Utah, you can get into a better situation if you want to, or you can just stay in Utah and be the bridge to the next era.
Jazz have just announced that John Collins and Keontae George are not playing tonight against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Tom. So, as you referenced, probably not going to be a situation where all the good players play every night, because they know what time it is. It is a top 10 protected pick this year that goes to Oklahoma City, and that does have to convey at some point. But tell us about this Cleveland Cavalier team. I mean, I talked about this earlier. This is a scenario where oftentimes in the past, some of the good players we've had here have gone elsewhere and not played great, or unfortunately, in the case of Gordon Hayward, got hurt. But Donovan continues just to do Donovan things, and ultimately he has questions to answer come spring, and he knows that. Are you seeing a level up from Donovan? Like, what has allowed Kenny Atkinson to get this team off to this 25-4 start, and what should Jazz fans know about the team they're playing tonight?
They got to be active in the passing lanes if they want to have a prayer against this Cleveland Cavaliers team. They move the ball under Kenny Atkinson's system, and that's done very well for Donovan Mitchell, who is more of a slow-it-up ISO one-on-one guy than he is a ball mover or playing in a system that requires moving the ball. This team is so fun to watch. They play a style of basketball where it really hums. The ball really, really moves out there. And I think what you see when you look at the Cavs is their starting lineup is as good as anybody in the league. I mean, that 1 through 5 is so good. Evan Mobley finally taking the leap this year. He's a guy that is super, super talented. And it reminds me, like, when these guys come into the league, we have to remember they're 19, 20 years old. Keontae George, I don't have to remind you how rough it can be when you're 19, 20 years old in the NBA. Evan Mobley came out with, Rookie of the Year, runner-up in his rookie season, and then kind of stagnated a little bit. But I think this system, he's shooting the pill a little bit better from downtown, and he's just a really dynamic player. And Jared Allen, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, they've played just about every game this year. They've had incredible health on their side, and the continuity that they have, yes, it's a new head coach, but it is paying dividends. And when you look at, a guy like Donovan Mitchell, it does help to have other ball handlers attacking. Darius Garland is being one, and Evan Mobley. These guys are really dynamic. And, yeah, Donovan Mitchell isn't having the same sort of numbers that he did, high scoring numbers. But you know what? That's part of the plan, is they can't burn out Donovan Mitchell in the regular season and have him try to take 25 shots a game. That's just not going to work in the postseason. You need to be fresh, and they've done a great job of relying on that depth. They've got they got Max Strus back. Their depth is second to none. They play 10 of 11 guys who are really good. And you look at the numbers, Donovan Mitchell's playing 31 minutes a game. And so I think beyond anything, that might be just keeping him fresher for the postseason is going to be a lot better for him to try to reverse that script that, yeah, he's got great regular season numbers, but this guy's not making it to the conference finals. He needs to be better in the postseason, and he's right now playing at a high level, but it doesn't seem like they're wearing him out.
Have you seen enough? And obviously, playoff basketball is so different, and it is about the matchup across from you. Can we beat you 4 times in 7 tries? Have you seen enough from Cleveland to believe that they at least have a Mike Tyson reset, knock you in the jaw puncher's chance in a 7-game series against Boston?
I think they got a chance. Yeah, that series would go deep for sure. They're shooting the lights out right now. I mean, they're number 1 in the NBA with 41% 3-point shooting. It's just, listen to these numbers. Donovan Mitchell, 41%. Evan Mobley, 40%. Darius Garland, 44%. Karis LeVert, 47%. Isaac Okoro, 49%. Ty Jerome, 44%. All from downtown. That's insane. That's incredible shooting. And they're doing it without a spacing 5. So it's interesting. Jared Allen is not one of these modern day bigs who, can shoot the rock from downtown in spaces. He's more of the same thing with Derek Lively, Isaiah Hartenstein, these guys who are playing inside the rim, inside the paint, and they just move the ball so well that it doesn't matter. Spacing, you can get guys open shots by, driving and kicking, but oftentimes with the Cavs, it's a lot of cuts and a lot of ball movement. And with the Cleveland Cavaliers, the question for me is, can that shooting translate in the postseason when a lot of these guys haven't gone deep in the postseason before? We had those questions about Boston. They answered them in resounding fashion last year. And they're playing a little over their heads. I still think, when you look at their Pythagorean numbers, they're playing 2 games above their record. Their record is 2 games above what their point differential says they are. And so what that means to me is that they've won a lot of close games here down the stretch. And typically your point differential is more predictive of what kind of team you'll be going forward. And I think OKC and Boston are a tier above everybody else. But Cleveland, they're 25-4. They're a really good team. It's just, to me, whether they can keep shooting the lights out and whether that defense is still going to be top 5, top 7 in the NBA.
Had a jazz fan buddy of mine. We were all together over the weekend, a little holiday celebration. He asked me an interesting question that I wanted to get your thoughts on. He said, look, if the deal is this year for them to simply not win too much, if the deal this year is for them to try to, have the best odds possible of getting a great draft pick, as a Jazz fan who watches them every night, what should I be evaluating is the way he asked me the question. He's kind of an analytical guy, and so I'm going to ask you that question. If we all know what the deal is, if we all know what time it is, if we all know the potential prize, should they have Lady Luck shine on them in the lottery for once, Tom, finally we need a little luck around here. You're a smart guy. What would you say to Jazz fans? Like, you're going to watch Jazz Cavs tonight, Jazz fans. Here's what you should be evaluating.
It's decision making. Are you seeing professional basketball? And what I mean by that is you're not trying to do too much out there. You're making the right plays. Defensively, are you in the right spot? Yet you're not going to be as big as some other teams in terms of, sheer width and size and strength. But are you in the right place at the right time? And a lot of this is, the tricky balance of putting guys in uncomfortable situations that will pay dividends down the road. So you look at a guy like John Collins and playmaking. A lot of today's NBA is whether a team can find a Draymond Green type. I'm not saying that that's what John Collins is or that's what he'll project to be, but you need to be skilled. You need to be able to do multiple things out there. And I think when you got a roster like this, you don't have a primary ball handler who's going to be able to set the table for you. Right now, Keontae George is not that guy. Jordan Clarkson's never been that guy. He's a bucket getter through and through. So what I would like to see is some of these point forwards, Markkanen and John Collins, to see what they can do in terms of growing their game. And, again, there's going to be some ugly nights, but you want to see guys making the right decisions out there and getting open shots. I cover the Blazers where it seems like, they go through stretches where they just can't find any luck from downtown, but the process is sound. The drive and kick, Scoot Henderson driving into the paint, Keontae George, you want to see these driving kicks where you're getting open shots. And if you, in like a year or two, you replace that wing player and suddenly that guy is hitting at a 45% clip from downtown, you have built up the habits in years like this where it's just plug and play. It's going to be so much nicer when you can get guys who can shoot the rock and can make plays. And right now, they're struggling to get that consistency at the point guard position every night. And when you don't have that, it's really hard to win basketball games. But you want to see correct decisions, and you want to see guys being able to grow their game, develop parts of their game that they might not have on October 22nd, but come April 22nd, they're looking like a little bit of a new player.
Is there anyone on this roster outside of Markkanen who can't be traded? And even if he could, I'm not sure they'd want to, even though I think that would be the right move. But whatever, I've been there. We've talked about that for years now. Is there anyone on this roster that you think Danny and Justin simply would shut down any sort of trade conversations about?
No. This isn't Victor Wembanyama. There's no Victor Wembanyama on this team. There's no Luka Doncic. I mean, Houston's really interesting. I think a team like Houston, they're super young. OKC, super young. But even then, I think depending on where they want to be right now, Houston, they're still riding Alperen Şengün at the 5 position, and he might make his first All-Star appearance. But even then, I think the Houston Rockets would listen to just about anyone on the roster trade calls, because if they want to make it, if they want to reach the highest point in the NBA, they got to have those MVP caliber players on their team. There's only 5 of those guys in the league that you can have and say, we can win a championship with those guys. And I always say, if you're a good GM or if you're a good front office person, you are making your entire team available, and you keep that close to the vest. You do not want that information leaking. You don't want people hearing that you're putting players on the trade market, and that goes a long way with relationships and trust building with other executives around the league. They have a lot more conversations that get reported to the press. So if Markkanen wasn't trade restricted right now, I'm sure they're having talks about him, and they might even be having talks about him right now in terms of laying down the tracks for robust conversations come this summer. And I do think that the Jazz are, they're probably making a lot more phone calls than we think. And I do think that that's a sign of a good GM. We always hear about it, Danny Ainge after the trade deadline, talking about the deals that almost got done. He has a certain style to him that I think other GMs are making just as many calls at the trade deadline. It just doesn't get reported as much. So I do think that the Jazz should be open to any conversations on their roster. They are what they are, and I don't think there's anyone on this team. And I mean, outside of the top 10 MVP candidates, I think every player in the NBA is quote unquote on the table. And even in situations like Jimmy Butler, it's he might be available, but if the team doesn't get what they're asking for, then he's going to stay. And that doesn't mean that Jimmy Butler is super, super valuable. It's just other teams might not be valuing him as much as the Miami Heat do, and they feel like they got more leverage. So I suspect that the Utah Jazz are having calls about just about everyone on their roster, Markkanen included. Not to say that they're going to move him or even can move him, but I just think that's a signal of a good GM, is they're always trying to figure out the market value of their players.
I do agree with that, but let me follow up with this. What do you think it would take for them to trade Walker? Because he has been really, really good. And I think he's the one piece out of the, we've got 3 years now with Will. This is year 3 with Will. And they technically didn't draft Walker, but they got him in a trade. And so he's basically he has been with the Jazz for 3 years. So you're Danny Ainge, you're Justin Zanuck. GM calls and says, we're interested in Walker. What would it take to get him?
To get Walker Kessler, now let's talk about this. He's a great shot blocker. Is he a great rim protector? Is he an anchor of an elite defense? So far, we can't really point to the evidence to say such. Last year, they were dead last in defensive rating. This year, they're dead last in defensive rating. Is Walker Kessler a guy that if you put strong perimeter players around him defensively, can he anchor a top 5 defense? I don't know. I think he's really good, but some guys don't have the strength and the physicality to be a top 5 anchor of a defense. Walker has shown that he can be a great rim runner. He can be a guy who can block a bunch of shots. But to me, he is probably going to take I don't know. I would like to see a guy. Maybe a young up-and-coming point guard. I'm not saying Cade Cunningham. I'm not saying Tyrese Halliburton. I think those guys are above him in terms of trade value. But I would like to see a point guard on this Utah Jazz team that can really make a difference for them. Is Walker Kessler going to get them that type of talent? I don't know. But I do think he's a good young player who's protecting the rim in terms of his shot blocking, but I would like to see him get stronger. He doesn't have this. Rudy Gobert is like really strong. He's really fit and just body type. Kessler's a great shot blocker, but I would like to see him get a little bit stronger, a little bit more physical before I put him into one of a near untouchable guy on the roster.
All right, before I set you loose, I know you got to run, so if you want to just give me a name, do that. But who's the MVP of the league so far?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wrote about it, TomTheFinder.com. He's leading the league in scoring. He's leading the league in plus-minus. He's a great defensive player who's second in steals. He is the head of the snake for them. And without Chet Holmgren for basically most of the season and without Isaiah Hartenstein for half the season, they're still the best team in the NBA by point differential and playing in the Western Conference. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's the guy. And I know people like Jokic for that and love what they saw from Giannis in the NBA Cup Championship. But that NBA Cup Championship didn't happen. It didn't count. It didn't count. What happened in Vegas stays in Vegas, and a lot of people, 29 voters in Tim Bontem's straw poll, switched their MVP vote to Giannis or moved him up in the ranks after that Cup Championship. And I wrote about it on TomTheFinder.com. I think it's nonsensical. The game didn't count, and one quarter of basketball should not change your MVP performance or MVP standings. Based on the fact that Giannis had sleepwalking for the first couple weeks of the season defensively, and just because he had a high-profile game or a high-profile quarter that didn't even count in the race, and you're making a change to your ballot, that just makes no sense to me. I think it's silly. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's the guy, and he's not a household name, but he, in my opinion, has been the most valuable player this year.
Tommy, thanks, brother. Have a great broadcast tonight. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff, and we'll chat soon, all right?
You got it. Have a good one.
All right, the great Tom Haberstroh. All right, coming up, 5 o'clock hour. It's 1 hour of college football, the latest on the transfer portal news that dropped earlier today. It's not good news for Utah. It's good news for BYU. We'll tell you why coming up in just a little bit, but let's welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. It's the holiday season. We're all trying to budget, save a little cash. Well, you can save money on more affordable options for the following things. Your wireless situation, your internet situation, and, of course, cable TV as well. Give them a call. Get all the info at 801-424-DISH. What's going on, Ryan?
This is a great time to take a look at what you have and what you're spending because most likely your bill just had a pretty big increase, maybe 20%. And a lot of cases, that's what we've seen, whether it be your TV or your internet. Guys, especially if you're unhappy with your service, I have a lot of customers. I had a customer that we set up, and he just was cracking me up because he was calling it crap cable. He just super frustrated with the product and the reliability. Guys, Dish is the most reliable service out there. You're not getting your service from a cable company who's, technically getting things from satellite and then piping it to your house. you're getting it directly from the satellite. And with the new receivers, they actually have redundancies now where you're connected to the internet too. And so if there's a problem with maybe a weather, you're going to have access to your content there. So you're actually never going to go without service. Plus, you get access to your content everywhere, and you get the biggest DVR out there. 2 terabytes, 16 tuners, auto records your locals, auto hops commercial breaks. Guys, nobody does this. This is a big thing, and it is super cool. If you see it in action, basically you go into a commercial break and you see the first couple seconds of the commercial, you see a little hopper logo, and then it skips all 7, 12 commercials, whatever. You see the last couple seconds of the last commercial, so you know you didn't miss anything. It's an awesome service, and only Dish has this. And they can't advertise it because none of the broadcasters will allow them to talk about it because it's kind of cutting into their revenue. This is the kind of service you want. And plus, you get access to all your DVR content on the app. Call us up. You get the 2-year promotion, huge credits for the next 2 years. Price is guaranteed. We'll throw in movie channels, and this is the big one. Guys, Dish has upgraded all their systems, so you have the streaming apps built into the system. So let's say you do a 3-room system. All the TVs will have all the streaming apps built in, and so you have one remote. You run the whole thing. It makes it simple and easy. And the most popular one is probably Netflix, and especially since Sunday, on Christmas Day, we're going to have football games on Netflix. Dish is going to throw in the ad-free version of Netflix for 2 years. Guys, that is a massive offer. If you're not interested in that, I can set you up a $200 gift card, but it's not quite as good as that Netflix offer, which is $370+. Call us up, upgrade, especially if you got YouTube TV. Did you see that big rate increase? Upgrade. Take advantage of the better system, the faster DVR. Dish's DVR is so much faster than any of these other products. Call us up, take care of you. I'll throw in dinner at JCW's. Ask about our internet solutions. I got a half a dozen different internet providers. If you're paying more for fiber, you might be able to pay less for the same fiber, just pay a different provider. If you're paying a lot for your phone service, guys, use the same cell towers and pay $20, $30 a line less, plus get a brand new iPhone 16 or a Samsung S24. That's the iPhone Pro, by the way. Free when you get set up and pay less. This is what we do. We save you money. You just got to call us and let us work our magic. 424-DISH, 801-424-3474.
All right, what is going on? Drive at 5 time, your commute home on this Monday afternoon/evening gets rolling right now. Busy show today on this Monday afternoon after a jam-packed, busy sports weekend that includes pro football, college football, Week 16, and the NFL will wrap up tonight. Little Monday Night Football from Lambeau. It is the Packers and the Saints. The Saints are badly banged up. Green Bay is a 14.5-point favorite. That over-under is 43.5. With a win tonight, the Packers will lock in a playoff spot. And the Saints are without, their 5 best players. Derek Carr, Olave, Taysom Hill not playing. Alvin Kamara not playing. So the Saints are banged up. Packers should roll tonight to wrap up your weekend of pro football. Of course, a lot of the storylines today are about people that are mad about college football. Not necessarily breaking news, but we saw the first round of the college football playoff over the weekend, and folks not happy about the blowouts. I think a lot of people forget that we had a lot of blowouts when it was a 4-team situation as well. Those things just happen. But the quarterfinals will get rolling next week. It's going to be Texas, Arizona State, ASU winning the Big 12 in their first year in the conference. Very impressive work from Kenny Dillingham. Ohio State, they beat Tennessee. They smoked them, but Ohio State fans are still mad. For some reason, Ohio State's going to take on Oregon. Kind of feel bad for the Ducks, the best team in college football, and their reward, I guess I should say, air quotes, reward, is playing an Ohio State team that when they are right, they're as good as anyone in the country, 42-17. Ryan Day has lost to Michigan 4 straight times now. I always found that interesting. And look, it is different for Ohio State, Michigan, but I think Coach Witt beat Bronco 4 times in a row at one point. I think Bronco had lost 4 games to Utah at one point. It never felt like his job was in danger, but it's different for Ohio State, Michigan. If you can't beat your rival, 3 straight to Harbaugh, 1 to Sharon Moore, and a lot of Ohio State fans are saying if they don't win the national championship, he should lose his job, which I fully do not understand at all. But the games coming up next week should be fun. Penn State and Boise State, that will be a 10.5-point line as of now. That's Tuesday on New Year's Eve. 10.5-point line as of now. Penn State is your favorite. And then on Wednesday, on New Year's Day, Texas and Arizona State. That technically is the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Texas is a 2-touchdown favorite, a 14-point favorite over ASU, the champion from the Big 12. Aforementioned Ohio State-Oregon game. Ohio State is a 2-point favorite over the number 1 team in the country. That is the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And then Notre Dame, who handled Indiana, will advance to take on Georgia. Georgia only a 1.5-point favorite there in the Sugar Bowl. New Orleans, Louisiana is where that game will be played. The site of, in my opinion, the greatest win in the history of Utah football, that Utah football win over Alabama. And for all of the belly aching about how none of these games were close, I thought the Clemson-Texas game was relatively competitive, relatively. Clemson did a good job of at least keeping it respectable. If you eliminate these games the way people are talking about, where it's only blue blood, only brand names, Kirk Herbstreit having himself quite a day, you eliminate the potential and the possibility for the unknown and the historic that oftentimes breeds the best memories. I reference Utah-Alabama, and yes, the Alabama walking line is they didn't want to play in that game. They felt they were deserving of something better. They were without their left tackle, but that's a historic win for Utah football, a program-defining win that helped them gain entrance to the Pac-12 and became a P5, now P4 power football team. And you can't eliminate the potential for that because that's what makes it fun. And certainly that's what makes college football fun, in my opinion, the most unpredictable sport there is, including pro football. To me, college football, week in and week out, brings us the most unpredictable games and upsets of all kinds and wins of all different types and situations. And yes, it's clear that there are some things with the system that probably needs a little bit of tweaking. A lot of really smart college football people were not excited to see this thing be expanded to 12. I'll repeat what I said earlier. I don't love the automatic bye for conference champs, but at the same time, I do believe winning your conference should matter. And ultimately, whatever formula they come up with, we're just going to argue about it, and I'm sure the powers that be just love that people are talking about college football. All right, from the local standpoint, some surprising news came down earlier today that Keanu Tanavasa has entered the transfer portal, and according to Brandon Huffman, who joins us in about 10, 15 minutes from right now. The two potential landing spots for Keanu Tanavasa are Florida and Texas. There are some online rumors that Brigham Young is involved here. BYU potentially landing Keanu Tanavasa would hurt Utah football for sure. And this comes, the week after Cameron Calhoun announced that he was headed to Tuscaloosa to play for Alabama. And yes, I know that both of these young men tweeted out a Utah man, MI, or whatever, and said they were all in, 10 toes on the ground, as you like to say. This is simply the business model, and you would do it too if you had the opportunity. I don't know what you do for a living, but if you had an opportunity to just put yourself out there as available and a company decided to quadruple your salary, guess what you would do? You would go work for that company, and so would I. Period. End of story. So if you're mad at Keanu Tanavasa today, I get it. You're a Ute fan. He's awesome. It sucks that he's leaving. The moniker of the show, and I'll just send it out to you guys, you can always not tweet. It's always an option to not tweet, and I get it. I get at this time why all of us are a little bit frustrated with certain things because we are all still getting used to a new dynamic with this sport that we all love to watch, that we all love to consume, that we all love to talk about. And the other thing, and I've talked about this, the new reality here is chances are if you're a Utah football fan, let's say you're a season ticket holder, over the past couple of years, I know you're receiving more asks from the athletic department in the school to donate more money. It's not just season tickets. It's not just food and bev and merch. I mean, they want you to donate to the collective. They need boosters and powerful people with deep pockets to step up to support the program because that's the lifeblood of the sport now, as Kyle talks about all the time. But the fact of the matter is, if you as an athletic department or a school are going to ask for more financial and economic support from your community, the community is going to provide different feedback and louder feedback if things aren't going well. And it's been a perfect storm for Utah football with all the injuries, the underperformance, and now a lot of players, 22 players in the transfer portal, namely Cameron Calhoun, Keanu Tanavasa. Those are the two that really sting. I get why the community is upset and frustrated. And right now they're asking you to cheer for names on paper with the 12 additions they've made. They are a top 20 portal class, according to 247 Sports. What does that mean? Only time will tell. But Brandon Huffman has some answers. He's going to join us coming up next as the 5 o'clock hour of the Drive on a Monday rolls along, and we'll say goodnight for Monday Night Football. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Monday Night Football coming up on the other side. It is the Packers and the Saints to wrap up week 16 in pro football. All right, Porter, here's the deal. It's fantasy football semifinals. Okay?
Oh, no.
Your boy's in it after the horrible start. Kind of like a hybrid of like Howie Roseman and Bill Belichick as far as, my ability to create, transactions, trades, waiver wire pickups, cerebral football talent additions to the roster has led me to the semifinals.
I was going to say, it wasn't a good start for you, so you've stormed back.
Oh, I turned it around. Like I said, I don't want to brag, but it's been pretty impressive. If there was an award for Executive of the Year in my league, I'd win it.
Is there not?
You know what? I run it. There is now. And I'm going to give it to myself because it's a phenomenal turnaround.
Shouldn't it just be whoever wins it overall?
Fair.
Because it is kind of just the game is you're the executive.
Well, and it's not over either because as of now, I have a 15-point lead. But tonight, my buddy has the Packers defense against a horrible Saints offense that is extremely injured. The projection is 9 points.
I was going to say.
He's projected to get 9, which I would win by 7, excuse me. But no, 6. Yeah, because I'm up 15. So ultimately, can he get 15 from the Packers D against a compromised Saints offense? I don't know.
That's tough from the D and special teams, but if you get a punt return, a kick return, and you get a few turnovers, which, as you mentioned, Saints without their guys, it could happen. It could happen, but you're in a good spot.
Yeah, it's been very Bill Polian-like for me to kind of right this ship and get us back into the semifinals. It'd be my 8th ring. I'm not bragging. It's not a big deal. So Monday Night Football coming your way, coming up next. Now, tomorrow, we have a best of show. So let me be very clear, because whenever we have a best of show, and I don't make it clear that it's that, people listen in real time and believe that I'm interviewing these people actually the day of the show. So Porter teased the show we put together for tomorrow. Let's make it very clear. We will not be live. It is the best of, as we're going to take Christmas Eve off.
Yeah, we'll be hanging out with fam and doing our thing on a Christmas Eve. Hope you guys are doing the same. If you are really starving for some sports radio, you can tune in. Hear some of our recent and best of interviews of the year. One, Trevor Riley made waves, we'll say, on the airwaves during the summer. Kalani Sitake talking some Holy War. Steve Young, obviously a guy that we can get to on a bunch of stuff. We chatted with Garrett Bowles last week, Guy Holiday last week, Blaine Fowler last week. So you'll be hearing a little bit of a preview of BYU and their bowl. You'll be hearing some Utah offseason stuff and some big picture stuff from 2024 as well.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. We're going to do some interviews, just play some interviews that we've done over the past couple of months, but it will not be live. Wanted to get 3 BYU guys, 3 Utah guys to keep you company as you're running errands on your Christmas Eve. So please enjoy that. And with that, we will say goodnight. A very special thank you today to Brandon Huffman, as well as Neil Smith, Tom Haberstroh, and Chris Comrani. For the sound you may have missed, website's an option, which is ESPN 700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. It's how I listen to our station. It's the ESPN 700 app, and that's in the App Store or the Google Play Store for free. Then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. That's available wherever you get your shows. Please subscribe to the pod. Give us a rating and a review. If you say nice things and give us all the stars possible, you will be eternally blessed. He's Porter. I'm Spence saying goodnight. Have a great Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Happy holidays. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day today and every day. And we will talk to you back live on the day after Christmas. Best of show tomorrow. But Monday Night Football coming your way, coming up next right here on ESPN 700.